Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother, asarimhotep, with the Madhu Mandela Institute for the Advancement of Science and Culture, as well as the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology. Today is Saturday, September the 18th, and today is basically kind of an open forum, and we're going to talk about setting up a strategy for a proper identification of the ancient Egyptians. What qualifications must we satisfy in order to properly identify the ancient Egyptians and or whatnot? So this is a continued conversation dealing with the color and so-called race of the ancient Egyptians. So all that and more when we return in just a second. And we are back, and I can't get rid of my thumbnail for some reason. Okay, there we go. So first things first, just want to thank all of you who are joining the panel right now and joining the conversation. We're going to have a panel a little bit. One of the guests have arrived, and a few more will be joining us in a few moments. And so before we continue, I just want to remind everyone and their mama that the latest text from Dr. Chilemalema Mukinge out of the Democratic Republic of Congo, his text, Muntu wa Nzambi, Portrait of Human as God's Special Creation, is out now, and you can go to Amazon.com or you can go to Madhu Mandela Press. It was a joy putting this book together and getting it out there to the world for y'all to read. And he is going to be on the show next Friday, and it's going to be at 5 p.m. Eastern time. So it's a little early. So those of y'all in Europe, you don't have to stay up too late to catch that live conversation. So we'll be talking about his life and the book and, the contents and the inspiration in the text. And so this is a good comparative text. He's of the Baluba people, and he talks about Baluba tradition, but also compares and contrasted with, various African wisdom traditions across the continent. So it's a very helpful text, and it's something that you definitely want to add into your library. And secondly, the Hoppy, or I should say the Aket tour for the film Hoppy. Most of y'all know that I was in a documentary film called Hoppy, along with Anthony Browder, Dr. Wade Nobles, Dr. Rosalind Jeffries, Dr. Solange Ashby, Brother Mfudishi Jehuti Times, Professor James Smalls, and I think I mentioned Dr. Leonard Jeffries already, but if I did, I do apologize. But now we're putting together a tour of Kemet, which is going to happen in February of 2022, February the 18th. And we're also going to have a conference. And so all the people that you see on the flyer are going to be presenting at that conference. Dr. Wade Nobles, Mfudishi, Mr. and Mrs. Jeffries, Dr. Solange Ashby, Anthony Browder, and of course, Professor James Smalls. So this is going to be a very powerful, and historic event. So if you want to know more, go to Aket Tours. Here's the link, .com. Go to akettours.com and put your deposit down and let's go to Kemet, since we're talking about Kemet tonight. So a lot of folks who talk about bad about Kemet ain't been, and so you don't want to be in that fold. So make sure that y'all come out and check that out. And lastly, make sure that you hit up the Spreadshirt website, and the link is in the description, and check out some of the t-shirts that we have there. Proceeds, of course, help to go towards the filming of the documentary China Into, and I'll be shooting parts for our documentary while in Kemet when we go in February. So make sure that you check it out. We got the Kimoyo shirts. This is coming. Black is not a race, it's a vibe, which is going to be which is very relatable to the topic of today. And the Malcolm X function t-shirts. I should have wore that. I think I might change shirts and put this on. So you can check those out at the Spreadshirt link in the description. But anyway, two of our guests are here, and I want to first introduce the topic. So right now, as we speak, there is an over 20-hour conversation on the blackness of the ancient Egyptians on the Real Black Atheist channel. And I was there for like a good 7-8 hours of that last night. And I wanted to continue the conversation, but to have a more focused conversation on setting up the criteria, because I know nobody's going to go back and watch all 24 plus hours, of that program. So we have something good and digestible here that you can walk away with some talking points and some guidance, and then we can do something bigger in the future based upon the criteria that we set here today. So I want to welcome to the program Sister Emmy Kett and Brother Wujawu. Let me change that. There we go. Peace and blessings. Welcome to the program.
Peace. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. So just peace to you. Appreciate you taking the time out and actually carrying out what you had suggested last night, because I think it is very important to do exactly what we about to get into. And so I'm here and present, and let's get it in.
Peace and blessings, Sister Emmy Kett.
Yes, peace, and Dua for inviting me on the panel, and definitely looking forward to this and just listening to and contributing if it is possible on a conversation. And it would be great, because I think I'll get my blood pressure down here and learn a bit.
All right. Well, first and foremost, I think Brother Wujawu, were you there from the beginning of the initial conversation?
Yep.
And if so, can you give us kind of a breakdown on what was happening, how did the conversation start, and all that good stuff?
Well, man, where do you start? Okay, I'll just say the beginning of the current live stream that's going on 20 plus hours right now. It started off as an after party type of stream coming off of Chief X live stream of the same title. So Chief X had a title of his live stream, Black, White, Egyptian History, or whatever the case is. And so on his stream, they were talking and discussing about whether or not the Egyptians are black or white. And they were addressing that question through various means. And so that went on for maybe 2 hours or whatever. And then so Uncle Keck struck up the Real Black Atheist channel to have like an after party discussion about the same thing. And so there you are. So, but the issue is an ongoing issue of, it's just a reworded way of asking, what race were the ancient Egyptians, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And And there's a lot of problems with that. And so, it's really hard to kind of unpack all of that stuff with a large panel who are not in sync with the disciplines that it would take to actually resolve that. Which is why I appreciate what you're doing right now, is to outline what would it take to answer such a question. And so that's what I'm here to, we get into.
Indeed. And this seems to be, of course, the nature of this topic goes back decades, back to actually I could say centuries now, since, Count Volney and, others. Actually, we can, let me say this. In terms of the dispute of the color of the ancient Egyptians, the ancient folks who were there and saw them live, I have yet to find a contradiction in terms of their description of the ancient Egyptians, in terms of the phenotypic characteristics of who they are. But it's, as Martin Bernal articulated in his series of Black Athena, you see the shift change from the ancient model of ancient Egypt to the Aryan model, and to where, now they're trying to shift the culture and characteristics to lean more towards Asia and Europe altogether. And so, that goes into, I think, so during the 1700s of the Renaissance. And so the conversation continues to this day. But, I didn't catch what's his name's live, because my brain cells can't take it, to listen to Chief X, because he doesn't comprehend a lot of what he tries to talk about, and it's just a waste of time, in my opinion. But regardless, it's an ongoing conversation, and literally as we speak, it's an ongoing conversation. Or the real Black
Atheist. That's literal.
And I'm pretty sure they're just rehashing the same thing we talked about 10, 15 hours ago.
No, but listen, really, it's a revolving door over there. I just left from over there again. I popped in, chimed in a little bit, and it's the exact same arguments, but different people. So it's like a revolving door conversation at this point.
So, Sister Emmy Cat, what did you get from the conversation, and where do you feel that we need to go, given the nature of the conversation in which you heard and was involved in?
The conversation over at Chief X, or just both in general, summary?
Well, speaking more specifically with the conversation, the ongoing conversation on the Real Black Atheist channel, but you can include that as well, since that was the spark.
Oh, okay. So from what I get is people want to know if the ancient the ancient Egyptians that are matched, are they black, or were they black? But my thing is with the whole thing about black, even for in modern times, we still not, it's not a concrete way of identification, because you can't, black is more of a general term of identification, where when it comes to the skin color, because some people will use a phenotype, some people will use genetics, some people will use complexion to define what is black. But all of those are they're like murky stuff, where it's not definitive. So when you're asking, why they're black, the question is still it's like an open-ended question, where it's like, what do you mean by black? What they black as in what they dark skin, what they black, because black is very broad, So even trying to figure that out, when we know that even in our times that is not definitive, I think I understand why it becomes a question of is something that is kind of hard to just say, okay, they were dark skinned, because obviously we didn't see them, you know. So in that sense, I think the best answer that I've had from you guys is that if the ancient Egyptians, the Remet, were, in our times, what they would be considered what we know as black. But for some reason, people miss that point. So I don't know what it is that people want to look more from that. But we do know that they would be considered what we term as black. But because that is not the only conversation, then it becomes to, are we the ancient Egyptians, or do we descend from the ancient Egyptians? Because it's not a one set of questions that people have. So it's a lot going on. And for me, I find it also on that particular aspect, it becomes very difficult, and people need to be very careful of trying to deter other people of trying to connect to ancient Egypt, because like it's a bad thing trying to study ancient Egypt, or if you're studying it, you're thinking you are the ancient Egyptians. We know on a continent, we have different tribes who actually have oral stories that tell them, about their migration and coming all the way from ancient Egypt. So over here, when you start to actually cut people off, and then with the same token, you tell people that we are, for example, we are Africans, and then tell people we are not, we don't descend from, or we are not, I'll correct that. We are not related to these people. But then on the continent, the people on the continent that you are related to will tell you that we are related to those people. So it becomes a little bit murky, and people need to be careful how or what conclusions they're trying to make without actually doing the proper work and understanding first the connection with Africa, and then from Africa, what is it? Because I think people just say, we are Africans, but they don't really take the time to study that and then understand what is it with the Africans, and how do those Africans see themselves, and how do they connect to this particular thing that we are trying to either reject or either take, in that sense.
Indeed. Hold on one sec. I see Sheffrin in the chat. It's in the back chat. I posted the link on your Facebook, on the Facebook group that I created in the private message. So just click that link and it'll bring you to the panel. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So again, in the part of the discussion that I joined, I kept hearing. First of all, I was just unorganized, and I get it. It's an after party show, so you're really just kind of going off the vibe of someone else's show, and it's kind of unplanned. So it's not a, there's no presentations, so to speak, but the unorganized thoughts is what more so put me at unease, because it's clear that, and I understand that they're not scholars. So, but in this day and age, one should expect that they would at least attempt to, when they're doing their studies, to do it in a scholarly manner, to have some kind of idea of how scholarship is done. And part of that process is a deep literature review. And those who, one, are in opposition of the African character of ancient Egyptian, and who's arguing that they're not related to, so-called sub-Saharan Africans and West Africans, they just don't read. And it's interesting that they act like, for example, this is an Egyptologist, bona fide, Dr. Abubakri Musalam, who has a text here, the Paths of the Nile, relations between ancient Egypt and Black Africa, right? It's in French. I'm just translating, right? So, he kind of summarizes in here, but he has another book. I don't have it here, but when he talks about the Egyptian origins of the Fulani. Now, this is one of the top scholars just in the world in Egyptology and linguistics, speaks Fulani fluently, as well as Wolof. And he's a native Fulani. And they never cite and quote works like this. And I saw Aziz fall in the chat, and if he wants to join the panel, just let me know, and I'll send you the link on Facebook. And so he can talk about, for example, this. I know it's bright and y'all can't see, but hopefully it'll come into focus. When they're talking about the oral tradition of and the 6 migrations of Yoro Jiao. And like a lot of folks are not familiar with this text, and this was recorded in the early 1900s. And this is no influence by Europeans or Egyptologists or anything. It's already a standing oral tradition prior to the coming of Arabs or Europeans in Wolof culture of their various migrations from the Nile Valley. And again, this was recorded at the turn of the century in the early 1900s. And people are unaware. I see Sheffrin has made it in the building. People are unaware of texts like this because it's in another language. And so when people say that, there's no relation from ancient Egypt to West Africans, they haven't read texts like this. And and we can go ad infinitum of the work that has been done on the various family migrations. All right, I'm gonna send you the link, Brother Aziz. And so before we continue, now that we got Brother Sheffrin, in the building with the real black atheist, want to let him chime in on the conversation, because he was part of the original conversation with Brother Chief X. And so I want to ask you, what was the motivation, and what is your position given the discussion that happened on yesterday? While I get Brother Aziz in here. All right, go ahead.
All right, what's up? Peace to everybody. Peace again. I feel like I didn't talk to y'all till I'm blue in the face at this point. But yeah, my position on Chief Extreme, I was showing, that there was a quote unquote what we call a black presence in ancient Egypt. I pretty much knew what they was gonna present, and I was just trying to add balance. I was showing that I knew that it was it was different phenotypes, and I knew that they was going basically harp on a specific phenotype that they want to say was in Egypt. So I just was there to give balance and show that there was definitely phenotypes and groups there that that would be nowadays what we consider as black. So that was my position, and that's the position I took on Chief Extreme, the original stream.
If I may, I just want to kind of give a little expand the context in which the conversation it has come up on a little bit more history of it. So the recent root of the present conversation, the iteration of it now, is really rooted in the pushback that is given to like the extremism that's being perceived by quote unquote Kemites, modern Kemetic groups and shrines and individuals that are pushing Egyptian doctrine, lifestyle, and stuff like that. These are people that are we're familiar with the shrine of Ptah, shrine of Ma'at, temple of Anu,
lifestyle and stuff
and
like
so on.
that.
Oh, somebody came on it, and I hear feedback.
Yeah, I think that's Brother Aziz.
Okay.
I just muted your mic, Aziz, because we're getting feedback.
Okay.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So I'm just giving a little context. So there's been recent pushback on that, and so there's been like a slight war or battle between those groups that are considered Kemetic groups and Kemetic people versus people who are pushing back on that. Saying that, why are you studying Kemet? Why are you living Kemet? Why is it all about Kemet? You're not Egyptians. Egyptians weren't black. It's just a feel-good thing. All of the different statements that's being made on both ends, back and forth. And so Chief X did a video pretty much trying to push back on that and debunk the blackness of Egyptians. And he did a video, and it didn't really receive too many responses that he was expecting or hoping to happen. And so he impaneled a group of people, Sheffrin being on the panel, Brother Ngozi, Brother Aku, to have a further discussion about that. And plus Chief X was kicking off his YouTube channel and whatnot. So that's how it kind of came into it. And in between the things that I'm saying, there's a lot of Facebook posts and kind of back and forth things that have been going on. And so I just wanted to give that a little more recent context of how this even came about right now. So just remember, at all times, it's an issue of trying to prove that African Americans, us here in America, we're not the ancient Egyptians, and therefore it's frivolous or useless to study it and deal with it or try to live it and act out an illusion and whatnot. That's the kind of spirit behind some of these talks.
Indeed. So when the first thing that I want to attack is this notion of the answering the questions, are the ancient Egyptians black? What are your feelings on that question itself? And just a short answer, and I'm going to ask that to each one of y'all. So I'm gonna start with Emiket, then I'm gonna go with I'm gonna start with Brother Aziz, then I'm gonna go to Emiket, then Wujawu, and then Sheffrin.
I think I understand where people are coming from when they ask that question, but it's probably the most surface way of looking at ancient Egypt and maybe our connection to ancient Africa. But as far as do I think that the ancient Egyptians were black? I mean, yeah, I believe that Egypt was a black African civilization, no different than other black African civilizations.
All right, Sister Emiket.
Yes, I would have to agree with Aziz and say that it is a valid question to ask, but it also it depends, and also I think it shows the intent for some people, and there's always different intents for wanting to look more into something. So for some people, they want to affiliate themselves with ancient Egypt, and we understand that because that's a great civilization that we know. There's not so many great civilizations, and this is one of them, and this is one that we actually know from that is from Africa, from the continent itself. So I do understand why people would want to know about the race, and especially with the history of Egyptology itself. Now, on the other end, for those who want to have an attachment to it just for the sake of an attachment, that's a different thing. So if it's not, then they will not be interested in it. If those people, if the people are Black, then that's good for them. If they're not, if it turn out that they're not Black, then they'll leave it alone. Now, for other people, it becomes redundant because it's more of the intent of actually trying to study when the culture itself, or any other civilization for that matter. It's a different kind of focus. So that will not be something that you do not want to study something just because you have an affiliation to it by race or something like that. So that's where these kind of conflicts come about, and also when it comes to people actually literally telling other people that why are you trying to study this particular culture? Do you think you're one of them? Because clearly that when you're doing cultural studies and this is actually a field of study that you get a degree out of it. We know that. So not everybody, you're not trying to, everybody studying that is not trying to be that. People get different things out of it, and we know what different societies have gotten out of ancient Kemet. So people need to understand the reason why other people actually do study, other cultures and history in general. But I do understand the other part for the other people whose commitment and intent doesn't go that far. But ancient Egypt and the culture and the people were on a continent. There wasn't any walls outside of Egypt, connecting, between Egypt and other African societies. So, it should just be clear. It shouldn't even be a question that people need to drag for years.
Who did I say was next? Wujawu? He fell asleep already. Been up 24 hours.
Oh no, here we go. Sorry. I think that the question, are the Egyptians Black, at least coming from our us asking the question, is really rooted in the byproduct of us having an identity crisis. As a result of the transatlantic slave trade, we as African Americans, we have a very foggy, consistent link with culture and identity, and so we have a void to fill. And asking the questions, are the Egyptians Black, is rooted there, and then the fact that ancient Egypt is such a glorified and rightfully glorified ancient civilization that is held up high around the world. Whether you're Black, white, or whatever culture, Egypt is seen as a very remarkable achievement. And so just like I'm a father, and if my child was to achieve something in sports or scholarly education, whatever the case is, I'm going to feel proud and say, hey, that's my daughter, that's my son that's doing that. So I'm going to want to have an attachment to that, because it's such a great accomplishment in that way. And so Egypt being what it is, the question of are the Egyptians Black? If the answer is yes, then it satisfies us to be proud to have a win after taking the atrocious loss as the transatlantic slave trade, that we are responsible for one of the greatest achievements on the planet and things like that. So we have this need for them to be Black in that sense. So we raised the question, and then on the flip side of it are the Egyptians Black from the other direction. There's a suppression or denial because on the other side, they don't want to give credit to anybody that's remotely linked to the people that were enslaved and that were deemed and propagated as being primitive and animals and so on and so forth to justify the institution of slavery and all the kidnapping and so on and so forth, the colonization and so on and so forth. So I think that the question is are they black is kind of coming out of that environment and everything. Now, just real quick, I think the question creates a big problem, and we've seen it play out all this time. And what we're doing now, I think, is part of the solution to correct this problem and the approach of the question, because the questions being asked, I think, it's not fitted when it comes to ancient Egyptian or any historical ancient culture to put the black, and we know black as a color or racial construct, on the people. I think that is the wrong way to even approach that from the beginning. But I do understand why, and I just gave the reason why.
Brother Sheffrin.
Oh, yeah, God. Hey, damn, Wuja, I agree with you 100%. That's how you answer the question. You know what I mean? There ain't too many times I've been on the panel, and I agree with Wuja assessment 100%, but he definitely nailed my sentiments on it 100%. Like it comes from, a place of us, our situation, and I feel like it comes out of a question, and us questioning the inferiority that our situation put us in. You know what I mean? It makes us question, do we measure up, right? We always was looking for a way to measure up to everybody else, so us being told historically that ancient Egyptians were black, it's almost a no-brainer that a people that's been told the most negative things about themselves, right? Or being cast as the lowest, you know what I mean, and the most underachieving, group of people ever compared to everybody else. Once we were told that Egypt, right, which was, we was told was, the first, civilization in history to reach a zenith or golden age, we automatically attached ourselves to it. So when the question comes up, or if we can question whether that people that we put so much stock in, if they wasn't black, now that inferiority complex start, seeping back in. Egypt for most of us, filled the void, right? It filled the historical void for us. So, once the questions start getting asked, was these people even black? Or now y'all being culture vultures, it puts you back in the state where, like, damn, if I lose Egypt, right? Maybe white people was right about us. You know what I mean? So, because I feel like with the amount of attention Egypt get in the world, no place in Africa gives us, you know what I mean, what Egypt would give us if it was a black civilization. Forget it just being African, right? Because more than just one type of people exist on the continent of Africa. Africa is a continent. The same way you got different phenotypes and everything that exists on the continent of Asia, you know what I mean? It's the same way you got different people and phenotypes that exist upon the continent of Africa. So if that civilization of Egypt, goes to another group of Africans that have nothing to do with us, then that inferiority complex definitely seeps back in on us, and it becomes a challenge for us to try to find relevance in the historical world. So I agree with what Wujabu said.
All right. Well, to kind of piggyback and answer on that question, it is, for me, it's ultimately irrelevant to how you got to the study and knowledge of ancient Egypt, because there's multiple ways in which people get there. What I fight against is those, I think Sister Emmy Kent mentioned this earlier, those who try to discourage the study of ancient Kemet because they disagree with why some people like ancient Kemet. That's not a logical or a right reason to try to discourage the study and identification with Egypt. And what people have to realize is that every human being has their own agency, and certain things resonate with certain people that don't resonate with others, and you just have to let them be. That's their life, that's their business. And so if you're tired of hearing about ancient Egypt, that's your personal problem. You know, the people who are interested in it, they're not tired of it. And this is something that, you know, you just have to learn and mature and grow. A lot of us still think like proselytizing, you know, religious Europeans and Middle Eastern Arabs who believe that everybody got to think and operate and move in the same way that we do. And if their motivations aren't the same as my motivations, then something is wrong. And I find that problematic. And what's very interesting is that, and I want to, you know, give it to Brother Aziz. And who are you now today? Zuseto, how do you say it?
Nah, Zoo is just like a nickname for people who have the name Aziz.
Okay.
And then Chedo is, you know, Chedo is the people in Senegal who you know, who kind of were resistance to the you know, incoming religions and outside cultures.
Mm-hmm. Appreciate it. But yeah, what I was going to say is that, you know, even if you were just a diehard West African, you can't escape the study of ancient Egypt
At all,
because much of what happened and was influenced, what happened and emerged in West Africa in which you studied, happened as a result of things that were going on in Egypt. And I do a lecture on this, and I show how the fall of Egypt gave rise to the transatlantic slave trade.
mm-hmm.
Without the fall of Egypt, you don't have the slave trade.
Mm-hmm.
Without the Muslims coming over and spreading into West Africa, you don't get the large empires.
Mm-hmm.
With the exception of the ancient Ghana, the real ancient Ghana, not modern state Ghana,
Mm-hmm.
all the other big states were Muslim states.
Yeah.
So even when you're trying to boast that we need to study these large West African traditions, much of that was influenced by what came from the East.
Indeed, you brought up that book that passed from the Nile. You know, I think a lot of times when we talk about, even when we compare you know, aspects of civilization from West Africa to you know, the Nile or to Egypt specifically, people would be like, oh, that's probably some Arab stuff, you know, like Amir or something like that. But there's a term he talks about, like the term that they say in Wolof, Laman, you know, and this is a political title that is specific to people who are land gerents, you know. And this is not something that you find in, an Arabic context. You only find this in ancient Egyptian and other West African languages. As far as I know, I haven't looked into East African languages and elsewhere. But, that's something that you're only going to find an explanation for that in ancient Egypt.
Yeah. And it's interesting because again, one of the aspects, and he has a whole book dedicated to it. I don't have that one here. It's in Philly, but the relationship between the migrations, specifically the 6 major Wolof migrations, and why that is very important, and why he's able to use and defend this, because this is recorded at a time where no one could argue that, well, this was the result of some benevolent Egyptologists, or they were trying to, for some trying to attach themselves to glory, because they weren't involved like that. They weren't introduced because this is part of the culture. And I just posted on the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology a discussion between some collagen scholars, talking about their migrations coming out of Egypt through Sudan into Uganda, Kenya, etc. And that's just part of the entire oral tradition. It has nothing to do with with Arabs, has nothing to do with the Bible, has nothing to do with Europeans. And so even Dr. Modupe Oduyoye, speaks about this stuff. So he's one of the few that talks about this in English. So if you can find his books, they charge an arm and a leg now, because his stuff is out of print. And then of course Dr. Muba Binge Bilolo, he even talks about certain things and certain people migrating and then coming into Congo. But the point being, there's a lot of scholarship out there. Most of it is in French. And if you're not hip to these things, you just miss out on a whole body of knowledge on these different types of relationships. And so, when I'm gonna jump to Sheffrin. So I know you said the words black elements, but for you, what criterion must be satisfied in order for you to be convinced that the ancient Egyptian civilization was the product of quote unquote black African people?
Oh man. I think it's already I think it was already settled for me. I was just asking for other people's perspective. Like it was already I arrived at the realization a long time ago, but I arrived at it through Nubia, right?
But sorry to interrupt.
But
even regardless of how, what the positions that you've been arguing, and just for the sake of the conversation, because I'm basically going to ask this for everyone, what criterion must be settled in your eyes to make that argument definitive?
Basically, the physical evidence. You know what I mean? It was all physical. It was nothing philosophical. It was all, everything was, I was shown it through the physical material that was left behind. So that physical material, like I'm not like y'all. I don't read the ancient language. You know what I mean? So it was all physical evidence. The proximity, the people that was left behind, the remnants of the ancient civilization that attested to, the presence of these people. Those people still, remnants of those people still being in the vicinity. So tombs and stuff that was left behind. Basically the same stuff that the ancient Egyptian civilization and excavations left behind. That was the proof for me. So that was the it wasn't the language or nothing philosophical. It was all material evidence. And the burden of proof was met for me.
All righty. Brother Wujawu. Same question.
Okay, yeah. So for me to answer that question, I think that I would have to itemize the elements that make up culture. And then once I do that, then let's just for sake of time, let's just say there's 10. So there are 10 elements that make culture that we define as culture. I would then take that list and then identify each one of those things with what I can see in the ancient Egyptian culture itself, and then ask myself the question, in which direction do these elements that I'm witnessing in ancient Egypt cluster in proximity to what direction? Is it inner Africa? What other cultures? Does it cluster closer, have more similarities and overlapping with West Asian cultures or other inner African cultures, et cetera, et cetera? So I would have to do a systematic analysis of several cultures and create these lists, and then see which ones are closer to one another and the number of closenesses. So then I could come to a conclusion and say, well, wait a minute, the ancient Egyptian culture, as I'm witnessing it, it clusters closer to inner African cultures and whatnot. And I would have to go through the multiple things: language, cuisine, dress codes, defense, food production, the whole litany of things that are culture. So that's what so I would have to do that to come to answer that. And so far where I am so far in that, doing that kind of work and study, is that I can say that ancient Egyptian culture is definitely an African culture and clusters closer to other African cultures within its proximity, that being more inner Africa, etc., than as people try to portray it being either European or Asian, etc.
Appreciate it. And I want to thank those who have donated. I see your super chats, and just want to say thank you and appreciate you. And also the one who sent a Cash App. I appreciate you and thank you once again. All righty. And Sister Yvette.
Okay, so I would say there's just different points of not of emphasizing what I would have known to be that the ancient Egyptian civilization and the culture itself had close affinity to other African cultures. Mostly, obviously, watching your shows and seeing all the comparative stuff that you did, that just re-emphasized a lot of things. Having some oral tradition from my culture was another thing, and also just having communications with other Kenyans as well from different tribes. I had actually I have a friend who's from Kamba and Kikuyu, and on Facebook she would see a lot of things that I would share, and each and every time she would share something with me, from her particular cultures, like what you were talking about here. This, this is how we have it here, and this and that. And she was so interested in seeing those close affinities of things that I was sharing and talking about when we would meet, and with her particular culture, to a point where she actually got to take Wujaw's class as well. And she would say that I recognize these things. I recognize what you're talking about from what we are taught, because she's very heavily into her culture. She does cultural studies as well. So those particular things just re-emphasized the question that you were asking, like at what point. It's just been all around, and then every single time when you and it comes to just doing the study, the more you actually study stuff and start to compare, when I start to compare that with the Lua stuff, when I start to see what you compare with her stuff, when I see what you've done comparing with other West African civilizations and cultures and all that, it just re-emphasizes it. So to me, it's not even a question of is it that, do you think it is, or do you know? We know it is. We see it in the artifacts, we see it in the languages, you see it in different customs that people still keep. We see it in the oral traditions and stories and things of that nature.
Brother Aziz?
What was the question exactly again? Remind me.
The question is, what characteristics, what characteristics must be satisfied in order to convince you that ancient Egypt is and or a byproduct of Black, and I'm putting it in quotes, Black African people?
Well, I mean, it's on the African continent. It was there, we can trace, the continuity of Egyptian culture from, we might not call it Egyptian, but for, Nakata, whatever we want to call it, and like what Jawu pointed out, it clusters closely to other African cultures. And when it comes to, like, I don't know, comments that people make, like maybe Sheffrin or feelings that he might have, I understand, because, and I think maybe most people do who do end up getting into the knowledge. I used to look at people even in Senegal like, yo, I don't want to hear nothing about ancient Egypt. Y'all just like ancient Egypt because it's some light-skinned niggas and they got gold on and blah, blah, blah. And that's interesting because it's also going off of what I could see and what I could hear. And this is coming from a person who, was raised in the land of Cheikh Diop, and it wasn't until I got here and actually studied the language and started to look at my experiences and could compare the culture for myself that I could see certain things that you really just can't get around and you can't explain by just, even race can't really explain those things, when it comes to the way people look at family, the way they relate to one another, this is these are things that like what Java said, just cluster more closely with other African civilizations and other African cultures.
And I think all of y'all bring up especially you and Emiket, and it shows the great contrast between those of us who are native born in the United States, who are African Americans, and how we approach it versus those who are native born Africans, and why Egypt resonates with them. And what I see, and no matter who I study or who I have a conversation with who's on continental Africa, once they get involved and start really studying ancient Egypt, its language, its rituals, its cultures and everything, the stuff immediately resonates with what they see on a daily basis in their native homelands and in their native cultures. For us who are in the United States, who were born here and don't necessarily have those traditional experiences, it's hard for a lot of us to see the connections. Where it's easier if you were born on the continent and can see the, certain people who still have rituals with the ibis mask.
Indeed.
You know what I'm saying? Like I was listening on the conversation sometime this morning, and someone said that, I think it was in Ngozi, that they don't mummify anywhere else in Africa except Egypt.
Oh man.
I'm like, you obviously don't read.
Yeah.
Because matter of fact, that's one of the things that I pointed out in the Aluja Volume 2, the mummification of kings in Congo, and they call them the Yombo, and how you can find the cognate for the same tradition in ancient Egypt. And it's like, if you don't read, if you don't engage in the cultures and things, you won't be able to see these things, because a lot of what comes out of Egypt comes to us through Egyptology speak.
Right.
So they don't recognize the words when they hear it, because we have a made up articulation process in Egyptology when it comes to words, for example. Whereas you can fill in, for those who speak their languages, like with you with Wolof and Bilolo with Chiluba, you know, they can easily find the words in their language that are the same exact words. So when the question was asked in terms of relationship to West Africa, I immediately said yes, because we're talking about certain types of degrees of relationships,
right,
that can easily be demonstrated for any serious student of Africology. But I want to address what I have posted up here. One says, Brother Sekou says, the greatest argument they have is this: if Black people created Egypt, why did they decline? And why no pyramids in modern sub-Saharan Africa? Very dumb questions, and I agree. But we know that all societies rise and fall,
right,
you know, and go through drastic change. So that's an irrelevant question. You know, anybody who's a student of history would know that. But it says, why no pyramids in modern sub-Saharan Africa? And I think this question here is false, because you have some and not just the ones that are, of course, the immediate imitation, not necessarily imitations, but replications of the pyramids in Egypt, you know, that are in Sudan, but just the native
iteration,
you know, like the kinds that they do with dirt.
Yeah,
You know, they build them as shrines and monuments to and that's where they actually bury their kings, you know, in those pyramids. But in West Africa, they're not big pyramids, they're just shrines,
right,
that are done, like especially like in Ghana. But even still, the same words for pyramid and mur whatnot, you can find their cognates for words for grave in these various languages. And what people don't realize is that a pyramid is essentially a mountain, right? What they don't realize is that part of the tradition, coming especially from like Central Africa and on the east, where there's a lot of mountains, is that kings were buried in mountains. And of course, when you get to Egypt, they try to replicate certain things in nature. That's why, like temples, you will always see like water at the bottom,
right,
and the pillars representing trees or stalks coming out of swamps. And they try to make them look like forests, because they no longer have that in that environment for which they move. But the reason why you don't see certain other things like this, because they have the real ones in the place in which they live.
Absolutely.
You don't have to build a pyramid. You go to the mountain and you bury your king.
Right, though.
You know. But you have something to say, Brother Wajaru?
No, I think that's an excellent point on that, as far as the pyramids. And I do want to say that I agree with the person also posted in the chat that even within ancient Egypt, pyramid building was not being done throughout the entire history of Kemet itself as well. So like people tend to forget about that. You have what they call the pyramid age, and then there's no more building of pyramids. You know, you got the major popular 3 pyramids in Giza, and then the smaller ones that are around there. And then the next thing you hear about pyramids is way later in northern Sudan now, in Merowe or Napata, etc. Those so-called Nubian pyramids. So even within Egypt, pyramid building only lasted for a certain range of time. So to expect it all throughout Africa on the basis of a question like that, it kind of like chops its own feet off even within the question. So yeah, I think it's a silly question.
But even with that, because you're not going to find too many kings, or if any buried in the pyramids. May have been removed, and or they could just be under, the pyramids themselves. But what they started doing was burying them in the mountains. We call them the Valley of the Kings.
Right.
And I don't know if y'all, actually been in the Valley of the Kings, but there's just mountains.
I'm waiting on a tour.
Yeah. And so I may show some. No, I think I do have some footage, because I know, like, in the Valley of the Kings, I mean, like, you can at the time, the last time that I went, you could film in the valley, but you couldn't film in the tombs. So when you go to Egypt, they have places that you can film, and then other places that either you would have to bribe, you would have to, what we call backsheesh. That's what they say. You have to give them some backsheesh, or you have to do it in a real formal way so that they block it off for you. And that's usually for people who have film crews or something like that to go and be able to film inside. But so, I wasn't able to film. I had to do some guerrilla sneaking with the phone to get the photo of in Ramesses III's tomb, to where you see that famous that depiction on the wall where the 4 Remech are depicted in the same way as the
glitch in the matrix,
so-called Nubians. I'm sorry,
I said the single glitch in the matrix.
Yeah. So you see the tradition. So it's many ways, like as you stated, they stopped building pyramids. I don't think anything past the Middle Kingdom, and after that, they just start burying them in the mountains in the same way that other Africans do when they bury their kings. If they live in a mountainous area, so to speak. But I was it.
And that's interesting, because you brought up the point about the mimicry of nature. So the pools near the temple complexes, the large columnar rows and things, replicating trees and things, and then burying in the hills and the mountains. Pyramids are artificial mountains.
Exactly.
And they explain them this way. So you wouldn't expect to find people, like you said, have the real deal to have the need to do the artificial things, like getting body work done. People get these plastic surgery. If you got it for real, you don't need the fake stuff.
Exactly though, and it's also a focus on the upper class. So this is like a minority of people. I got one source that says that in the late period, one of the most popular ways of burying the deceased was in the yacht burial mounds, which is interesting because that was the popular way of burying people in West Africa, in Mali and Senegal, across the Sahel almost,
Yeah, that's just interesting. I don't think that people are aware of it. And my frustration is, like, that's a question to me that's very just even surface, but it doesn't dawn on people who are dominated and preoccupied by frivolous subject matter, such as the skin color, such as is Kemet gay, such as whatever. They don't even even ponder to say, wait a minute, why did the Egyptians build these big columns? And those things are huge, like very, very huge. Like the why, like you know how we answer the questions, who, what, where, when, why, and how. Like we know the what. Okay, we see them, so that's the what. But the why, like why?
Yeah.
And we try to answer how. You know, we say they carved it. Did it? What kind of tools? Was it aliens involved? Whatever. But I mean,
I believe aliens.
but then you have the why though. I don't think people
Good.
get
I'm
far.
sorry.
No, I'm saying I don't think people get far enough to even ponder the why questions, because that takes more discipline and stamina to and research to answer the whys, you know.
But you know what? Even just with the questions that seem like they're just like frivolous and
I think
whatnot.
it's all froze.
Oh,
You sure did.
okay. Yeah, he's back. So I was just saying that even with the questions that you know, because the questions themselves, even if we see that they might be silly or they might be frivolous or they might be you know, for me is what I'm thinking is that whatever question that you have, there is ways to actually go about finding the answers, no matter how silly the questions are. And this is what people don't do. Like I can have a question in my head. I can say, did the ancient Egyptians eat shrimps? You know, so but how do I go about finding that out? So there are methods and the procedures that you have to go about to find these things, and that involves work. Obviously you have to go through the texts and things of that nature and do your research, and all of that. So but that the point is that even with the questions, people just don't want to do the work, because the questions itself is always allowed. You can have any kind of question, but how do you go about answering them? And what I see is just people want answers on YouTube, and they want it from a certain group of people. They want somebody else to do the work for them. And if that person tells them, have you done the literature review on these questions that you're challenging me on? Because sometimes they don't even ask, they challenge. So when you ask them, what literature review have you done on this thing? You never get answers. But every question needs a procedure to get answers for. So, but these are the steps that people don't do. Like you're not going to answer them on YouTube. You have to go and research. That's where you actually, if it interests you so much, if the ancient Egyptians were black or if they were white, go through that procedure and then answer the question. That could be the first step into actually getting into that language. Or even if you don't, just go through that or do the literature review, find what people are saying about it, but in those sense, you will have to take what the authority on the subject say. You're not going to challenge it because you do not know what you do not know.
I was about to say it's even worse, because when you finally come out with something, people don't believe it, and they know that they don't have the means to actually discern whether what you're saying is true or not. You know,
right?
and it shows that we're really victims of this American school system too. You know, but it's another problem too, because I was gonna say, if the question is, what is the connections between West Africa or the rest of Africa and Egypt, especially for somebody in the community, Asada made how many videos about the material evidence, the cultural evidence, like reading a book is one thing, but you can watch a video.
Yeah, they will not even do that because in the conversation yesterday with Asar, and I forget who he was when he was asking, because people will say that Asar and Wujao are being disingenuous, and he's like, just answer the question. It's like, and somebody tells them, have you seen this video that I've done? Have you read these books? Have you seen this and that? They don't want to do that, but they will want somebody to tell them and yell at that person, tell me, what is this? And if the person actually tells them this is it, if this is this, they say, no, I don't believe you.
I'm showing here some photos from the Valley of the Kings, And you can see, you know, they're not traditional mountains in the way that we would think of, like Mount Kilimanjaro, but this is the closest that they have in terms of just the natural landscape. And you see, you know, because you got to understand, like, matter of fact, I'm working on a text right now, and you know, here's a preview of some of it, and I'm on the section of dealing with Amen and how you find Amen throughout Africa, and the relationship between the paronymic association of the sun going over the horizon, and that being a signal, that being used as a metaphor for death. And anyone who goes and where the sunset is the you know, that's where, that's the gateway or the entrance into the ancestral world.
Right.
And so the mountain becomes that symbol. That's why the kings are buried on the west side of the river. You know, the direction of where the sun sets. And you will find this tradition all throughout Africa, and they're using the same terms. And so that's what you will see in my discussion on Osiris and the Amenta. So like when you go into Ghana, like, so like in ancient Egypt, you have what they call the Amin, how should I pronounce it? Amenit, or the Amentet.
Yeah.
You know, the land of the dead and all this other kind of stuff. It's in the Akan tradition, it's called Samanzi. And Saman is the cognate for Amen there, and Adzi is the word for land or world, which is the equivalent to the T suffix in Egyptian when it's a suffix of place.
That's good.
You know what I'm saying? So in the same way that the Amentu, the Westerners, the dead, are the Insamanfo, the dead alive, the ancestors, or the Nananom Insamanfo, using the same terms. If you don't know how to determine cognates, you'll miss this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm sorry, somebody else wanted to say something?
No, now I was looking at your pictures. You were going through them, and the Valley of the Kings, Saqqara, and all of that stuff being buried in the mountain, and it's just interesting that the royal burials had to at one point in time be kept secret because of the looting that was done all the way back in ancient times, you know. And so I'm just imagining, like, you know, a lot of times we kind of look at ancient Egypt through a fantasy, and we kind of keep ourselves in check, because you know, if you sit there and just kind of meditate on that, like, what would it take? Because, you know, while the king was alive, he had his burial being built and worked on, but at the same time, he had to keep it secret. So you have to trust a whole crew of people to keep it secret.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, there was some underhanded shadiness where they could be bribed to allow grave robbers to know where it is, and back doors, and they may have built in back doors to get to it, and so on and so forth. So imagine all of that going on, because to rob a tomb and to gain access to that amount of wealth was a huge come up for anybody.
Anybody. Yeah.
That's like breaking into Fort Knox back then. You know, you walking away with all those goods. So anyway, I just, as you were sharing that, I'm sitting there looking like the hills, because I'm wondering how archaeologists, like, now I see why when you read in archaeology, at least of Egypt, you'll read like archaeologist John Bowman. He would have discovered Tomb X in 1970, no, 1930, and then the tomb was lost and wasn't rediscovered until 1990. Now you see why, because those things are hard to peep out, and if you don't know where they are, it could get lost because the way that sands shift and whatever the case is. Anyway, so anyway, I just wanted to, I'm just thinking about those things while you were sharing your pictures.
What gets me is all right, so you know, those who read the glyphs should be familiar with this glyph here, the herd of face, and you should know that it's a very and I guess this is what we can get into next, the so-called stereotypical phenotypic features of the Africans and the wide range of phenotypes. But it's interesting that when you go into the actual glyphs, like when the glyphs for hair or the glyph for face, her right here, and I forgot what this
Tep.
yeah. So so was this Heret Tepet?
Yep, Hetty
Because
Tep.
this is Waset, Nebit, and I don't know what starts here. If is that
Hotep.
that looks like Hotep, but I don't know. But this looks like, well, this is definitely Waset, but
Well, I was gonna say Pet, Nebit Pet.
that's what I'm trying to think.
Yeah, it could be actually Nebet Pet. So it could be the sky, bread loaf in the sky, right at the bottom.
I'll have to highlight. See, that's the difference when you're looking at the raw glyphs on the walls, and
That's
especially with the damage.
Right,
You know what I'm saying,
2,000 years, live direct.
That's definitely chief though. Hetty Tep is the word for chief.
I was gonna say though, you bring up an interesting possible paradigm with the mountain thing. Well off the word for tomb, according to both Job and Lam, is the word Bamel. But Bamel is a composite of basically or basically a fossilization of the tomb, Pa Mel, where Pa Mer, Pa Mer.
Yeah.
And the word for mountain, volcano, is Mal, where the B is from a press from the emphasis on the M, but tomb and mountain both having that connection though.
Yeah. And I don't want to be sharing. I don't even know what's in. I have hundreds of photos that I still have yet to go through and organize and things. I'm sorry.
No, I was correct. Pet, you see it? That was a continuation of it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go back. Was it
Nebit Pet? So yeah, Headed Tepet, Waset, Nebit Pet. Right there, you see the pet.
Okay. Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah. So was that on the wall or was that?
Where is that? Do you remember where that was exactly?
I think this is Hatshepsut's tomb.
Okay.
I ain't properly.
But do you
label mine?
Do you have a picture of Hatshepsut's famous mortuary temple, the big one that's built into the wall? Like that's the epitome.
Yeah, that's what I. Let me go back.
That is the epitome of mountain building, like building into. Yeah.
So I think I got a better view.
Yeah. Like, come on now. I mean, That's referred to as Jesser Jesseru, the Holy of Holies of Amen. And
there are even some, like you see these here, you know, they don't have the big elaborate entrances, but they're still tombs in the mountains that you can go through.
Yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I saw that made me think. Like,
So this is a bigger.
How do you find those? Like, I mean, you know, without some technology.
I guess they got seismograph stuff now, but but prior to that technology.
Right. That's what I mean. So I understand how something can get lost and rediscovered 100 years later.
Yeah, but this is her.
Yeah, that's it.
This is built into and this is, you know, so imagine, because these are trucks and these are people. So, I mean, these are people over here. So look at the size of them in comparison to the landscape.
Right.
That is crazy.
So, yeah, man, it had a good, and it's hot for real. Like it's, you know,
no shade.
That's why you don't see any fat people on ancient Egyptian relief. Everybody's thin, and because that sun will burn all internal calories. It's just crazy. Like I don't know how many bottles of water I done went through. But here's a typical scene, you know, in the color, the dark reddish color of. Let me see if I can zoom in a bit to kind of see their faces.
You sure that's not the Grand Canyon?
In the Americas. And you can see the hairstyles, because of course they say these are wigs, but let's assume that they are wigs. Why would they develop? You notice they never have, like, I don't know how many of you have been to cosmetology school or seen the women that are training for cosmetology, and they have to practice on those wigs, and they're always these, you know, these little white, what do you call those things?
Mannequins? No,
mannequins with the long straight hair. Like, how come you never see Egyptian wigs with just long straight hair?
Right.
Why are they always like, when have you seen white people cut their hair like this? Never. You find this in West Africa, you find this in Central Africa, and of course you find it in the immediate area of ancient Egypt, where Africans cut their hair in this style. But you don't see this in Europe because they can't. Their hair is not strong enough to do this.
Well, imagine working in that condition with a wig on.
Exactly. And I'm telling you, like, I'm thinking, like, people say that a lot of the Egyptians shave because of like possible lice and all that. I think they just did it because it was hot. Like, you just got to be there and experience the heat. You know, you will see why all of them don't. They just basically have drawers on, you know, basically a tunic, and they walk in barefoot and shirtless for the most part. Sometimes you'll see women like that.
Yep.
You know,
no, true story.
But no, that's a good point about the wigs or hair. Even like for example, what came up yesterday was a person, Malhepri, and he's like the famous one people use because he's depicted as in black pigment when he's depicted. And in his tomb, they found his body in his tomb. He had a tightly curled hair, like afro. We would say afro today. And but it was actually sewn on. It was a wig. It was actually sewn or glued onto his scalp.
Wow.
And so any wig, the tripartite wig that women wore and stuff like that, it never emulated the hair texture and what we would consider European hair that we see. It was always tight curls and even layered. It was stagnant layer, like a bob that women call a bob type, a layered bob, you know, hairstyles and things. and then they braided. They actually sold, and this is the thing, because I looked into this a while back to argue against, you know, people on this, or to, you know, shed light on it. And Egyptian hair was a booming business in ancient Egypt. They actually had people who shaved their hair off, similar to what happens in India right now, and these high price hair. They used to shave let it grow, and then when it gets to a certain length, they would shave it and sell it. And at one point, at least during, I think it was Amenhotep III's time, but at some era of time, when it gets to a certain length, they would shave it and sell it. Oh, somebody came in. What's that?
My bad.
At one point in time, if hair was a stock, if ancient Egyptians had a stock market, hair went way up on the stock market to comparable to gold at certain points, you know, and they used it to actually braid it in to their hair, to extend their hair, braids, not long straight extensions, you know, that would be indicative of different European populations.
That's how you know they were black.
Yeah. But so I guess what are you know, like, for example, and I don't know if this was remade or if this was like this, but, you know, some people say, well, they ain't Africans because look at this nose. Now, was this rebuilt, or is that the actual face? And or why is this not also considered part of the common African phenotype?
Right, though. Because I know some dark-skinned people with some thin noses.
Exactly.
You know?
And that's why, like, in the conversation, I mentioned that because you would see Africans with this feature, they don't consider them Black Africans. They consider them Caucasians who moved into Africa and just got darker because of the sun. And they call them dark whites or Caucasians.
I wanted to ask you about that, Asar, if you could. I don't know if you have anything on the spot to share, but you mentioned, I actually even wrote it down. What did you mention? You mentioned
Pygmy Kitabo?
No, where did I put it? You mentioned extreme African theory or something the other night.
Oh, what did I?
You were saying the extreme
true Negro.
Yeah,
the true Negro hypothesis.
There you go. Yes, the true Negro hypothesis. That I think that is informative.
Hey, I got on the same shirt right now.
Hey, but it looked like you put on some. It looked like you had too many Twinkies right now.
Hey, that I'm telling you, that Egyptian sun took all that off by the end of the trip.
I bet that.
I saw the way he weighed about 150 right there, right now.
Oh no, I stay over 220. I think I'm at, even right now I'm at 250 or close to that.
But yeah, the Negro true Negro hypothesis. You have anything that you could elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, I have stuff, but I don't have like a slide or something where I can show citations. But I know Diop talks about it. Shermarker Keita talks about it all the time, and it's just part of the historical landscape of the idea that, you know, when you're talking about African people, when it comes to so-called Black African people, the only true Africans are the ones who look like, you know, Nigerians, like Yoruba people or Ghanaian people or the Batwa. Anyone outside of that range of shared phenotypic expression are not true, quote unquote, Negroes. And that's why there's such a debate on, you know, people in like Eritrea and certain Africans in Ethiopia, and of course the ancient Egyptian question, as being, you know, Africans or the result of Caucasians, quote unquote, coming out of Asia and migrating into Africa. and just getting a little slightly darker as a result of the extreme African sun. And this has posed a problem because this is, of course, linked with the Hamitic hypothesis. And so instead of, and I know Dr. Dekita is always fighting against this, you know, in trying to get people to understand the great diversity of phenotypic expressions across the continent. And that, you know, like people don't even realize that so-called kinky hair is a relatively new human mutation. Like the earliest Africans had straight to slightly curly hair.
Mm.
You know, it's only when I think we moved into like the confluence, the inner African confluence zone, which is the Sudan, and started living on the plains, did our hair texture change.
You know, I think this feeds into this notion that we hear come up in these conversations on this topic of the synonymous way that that people say black equals sub-Sahara Africa.
Yeah.
You know, so you're not black unless you're sub-Saharan African, and so they say black Africa is sub-Saharan Africa, and then white Africa is super-Saharan Africa.
I feel like that's why Egypt is so important. My bad if I cut you off. But I feel like that's why Egypt is so important also, because it also gives us a broader historical perspective on African history and world history, period. You know, this dude Michael Gomez in his book African Kingdoms, he directly and indirectly kind of shows that you know, over hundreds of years in different periods and all over North Africa, there's a regression of a black presence, you know, going from, you know, Libya, Egypt, coming all the way down to where it is now, you know, in Niger and Mali, Chad, and all this kind of stuff. But there's still black populations over there now, you know, and that's not discounting the fact that there may have been lighter skinned people.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, people have to also keep in the chronology in mind, I think, you know.
Yeah, and I'm just saying that we're actually playing into, without realizing it, into the banana and tailpipe okie doke type of thing of this separating of above Sahara, below the Sahara, and equating black with below the Sahara, and then having this psychological stereotype in our mind of what black is, in a lookership way, and then anything that doesn't fit that is not that, and so that kind of adds fuel or even creates the environment for these arguments of whether Egyptians are black or is it a product of black. Literally yesterday, the brother ex-architect asked me that question. Literally, he said, every time I said Egypt is an African civilization, he always wanted to point out it's a Northeast African civilization. And I asked him, why does he do that? And he says, to separate it from Black Africa. But he's not the only one that does that, you know. So it's clear as day to me, you know.
People don't read.
And but here's the thing: if you bring up the true true Negro hypothesis or the Hamitic hypothesis, they will be against all of that, but yet in their talk and everything, they will function as if they embraced it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which is telling, because it shows that we really do things out of ignorance and everything. So it's like self-contradictory. You don't like the Hamitic hypothesis on one hand, but yet you're actually functioning and swimming in it in your arguments as if you agree with it.
Right.
And to me, I think that's a sign of just straight ignorance, you know, just not knowing, lack of knowing. Oh, sorry about this show. The alien landing pad.
Yep, this is alien technology. He's showing the guide is showing the grooves of where they like how they put the blocks down, and there's like certain grooves inside that kind of fit like Legos.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then here he's showing how, of course, when people come, they deface it. So somebody put something Italiano, Carlo Italiano, 1820 on the pyramids, not necessarily not the pyramids, in the temple walls. So this is in the Ramesseum that I'm showing here.
Leonard from the Bronx.
You know, and so and what's interesting is that I didn't realize this until later. If you like, I don't know if I think I have a photo of him somewhere, but if you put a side profile of this brother here, he looks exactly like the depictions of Ramesses II.
You talking about the tour guide?
Yeah, the tour guide. You know, and you know, of course, it tells you nothing about his skin complexion, but I'm just saying in terms of the look. Like he just, like, if you put him next to a lot of those Ramesses II statues, he looks like him.
Now, Paul. Oh,
I'm sorry.
So here's a question that people ask. Okay, if you look at him, okay, like him, if he was walking down the average block in the hood or the city, the question that they would ask as well is, what would we call him?
It was a dog answering. You want to get in? You want to get in the conversation?
Would he be considered black? And here's the follow-up question to whatever that answer would be. So the thing is, would we consider him black in that scenario? And then the follow-up would be that this guy here, right here, is indicative of the ancient Egyptians. So whatever your answer is would answer the ultimate question that they try to go for, which is would the ancient Egyptians be considered black? And they're talking about black as in African Americans, etc.
Yeah, I would still consider him black, but I wouldn't consider him in the same range as like myself, or you know, somebody in further West Africa. Like, to me, he looks like a cross between like an Indian, the continental Indian or subcontinental Indian, and an Ethiopian. Like, he looks like one of my frat brothers in my chapter who's actually from Ethiopia. You know, and so he more so clusters along that line. And so, you know, but it's also possible that, you know, he himself is a product of a mixed heritage in terms of like an Arab and an African heritage. Like, you saw a lot of those people as well.
That's what I hear from a lot of Egyptians themselves. You know what I mean? Personally, and on, like, you know, interviews and TV. You know, it's usually even Anwar Sadat was talking about how he was the product of a Nubian mother and I think a northern Egyptian father. You know, so it just shows that there's a lot of mixing over there. But one notion that I find interesting, you know, when we talk about the identity of the Egyptians, is the fact that a lot of times Egyptian society is described by Egyptologists functioning with these societal roles that are inherited. You know, so there's an endogamic or an endogamous aspect to that. You know what I mean? So that also suggests, you know, some kind of caste situation. You know, and that's interesting because if we really think about Egypt as one of, or if not the first federated state, like real life federated state that we know of, you know, that means that we have to think of the Egyptian population as diverse, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And diverse groups, you know what I mean, who had different degrees of I don't want to say Egyptian-ness, you know what I'm saying? But something
Like,
along those lines, you know.
like look at the size of these columns. And then, you know, what people gotta understand is like there's writings, like they don't have cranes. Like, how do you get that stuff up there? And you know, look at the birds up here. But this is just one of the temples. Like this is why they believe aliens did this shit, and why I'm halfway pseudo to believe they ass. You know, but they're imitating the forest, the original, like when the Batwa ain't got to build a temple like this to be initiated, because the natural setting that's the first initiation temples. But in a desert complex where there's not much trees, there's not much vegetation, you have to imitate nature.
But listen, man. Can you imagine? Okay, imagine being a wanderer, a nomadic person, coming from the middle of nowhere, chasing food, and then you coming down into Egypt and you run into, because we're looking at ruins, by the way. So imagine if this was freshly painted, freshly thriving and everything, and you are a stranger and you come into Egypt. Do you understand how impressive that is? That alone had to be a weapon. It's almost, I look at it almost equivalent to the nuclear arms race. Like the United States has a certain amount of nuclear missiles, and the fact that we have silos and silos of nuclear missiles to the other countries that don't have it, it's a deterrent.
Yeah.
And so imagine people coming into Egypt from foreign lands seeing this stuff. Like, would you try to attack something like that? I mean, think about it. You like, hold up, man. If these people could do this, and it's so magnificent and mega, then it's like, wow. So, and then the colossal statues, like you're showing now. I mean, these things are huge.
That's why everybody who, even when they beat them, they had to join them.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So just imagine the beauty of walking down in Giza, just arriving for Giza for the first time back then. How white the limestone was and the temples are, and flush and plush everything was.
Look at this system.
Look at that wig. Look at that wig, boy. I see Ladosha's in the house. Ladosha, you got to start getting those tripartite wigs going on.
But that's why I find it ridiculous when people say that, you know, West Africans have nothing to do with ancient Egypt. You know, we don't even, you know, it's a whole other question whether there is genetic blood relationship that is recent between ancient Egyptians and modern West Africans and African Americans. But there's a lot within that civilization itself, you know, that is beneficial to just look at as Black people, as African descendant people. You know, it's ridiculous to say that there's nothing to gain from that.
Here's one of the Nubian brothers, and he's sitting there talking to me about how we are all one, African Americans and the Africans, and especially the people in Sudan.
Wait, stop. Pause that. Can you pause that real quick?
Go ahead.
Now, judging on these conversations, I don't think anybody on any of the panels that have recently happened and conversations happened would say that this brother right here would not be called Black in the United States.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's
like my uncle.
Exactly, and he looked like he play a mean game of spades.
Right.
You know, and he's talking about Dr. Ben and how Dr. Ben used to come, and he loved when Dr. Ben came through because Dr. Ben made sure that everyone supported the Nubian villages when he would do his tours. And so I don't think I mentioned this before, but this is the last time I went was with the Ku Kim Kemet tour. So our good brother Ankh.
Benu.
Yeah, Ankh Benu, who you saw earlier in the videos, in the other video, is the one who organized that tour. So shout out to brother Ankh Benu, New Orleans in the building, and so yeah, this is one of the Nubians. But I want to show the diversity of what is a quote unquote Nubian, because I got some other video as well. Let me see if I can. Where's those? These little kids or something else. Hold on. So when everybody starts talking about Nubians, they always want to go to that, like the Dinka type Nubians, and say that is the quintessential phenotype of all the quote unquote Nubians. I'm like, no, this is what Nubians look like as well. And you see this phenotype, this range here on the walls. You see this hair type and texture on the walls. These, in my opinion, these are your original Remech.
I think that's why people, it's always been said that people have to be careful when using the word Nubia, because I know that some people are not aware that there are people like this native Egyptians, and they're only used to what they see. And I know because even Chief X himself found videos like this and was actually arguing that these people are not Egyptians, and even the country don't consider them as Egyptian nationals. And he gave me a wiki article that actually debunked what he was trying to say. But because in those kind of people's heads, these people are not Egyptians. They somehow just found themselves in there. Nobody knows how they got in there, and they belong somewhere in Sudan somewhere, and they're just in the wrong place. Basically, these are not Egyptians.
Hey, if you had that video that you just showed, I just want to see if how fast I can pull this up real quick. I just want to, and I don't have to share my screen, but I'll just switch over to this, and then come back and look at.
Hold on, let me.
Show.
Yeah.
So the young boys that you showed,
Hey, hold on. Let me see if I can. Is there a way I could juxtapose? Hold on. Let me bring. So the people are going to have to kind of see your screen or your image on the left. Hold on. Does it share in that way?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, dang, is there a way? Let me see. No, it only does me. Nope, does me again. So yeah, well, I guess people are just going to have to kind of look at your image and then kind of juxtapose it. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, the image that I'm showing is Tutankhamun, and then the young boy, right? So
Yeah.
So if you look, if we're gonna do the lookership game, right? If we're gonna go down the hole of lookership, then it's so subjective because it's like a lot of gray areas that we could say, yeah, it does, yeah, it doesn't, and all this and that and everything. And I think that we just are really too extreme with it, and not just realize that one, there's a diversity there, and then two, if we had to get a mean or an average of what they were like if you were commissioned to go over into Egypt or anywhere and then draw one image that is representative of all the people in that area, that is a tough job, but they do it. Caricature is done all the time, and that's what the Egyptian artisans and scribes did when they represented Egypt. They had a small range, but it was a standard. So anyway, I was just saying that King Tut. Now I can see how.
There you go. That's King Tut right there.
Right.
I think you mentioned a good point because, and just to add to that, like even in Kenya nowadays, like when we represent, when we have a look a Kenyan look to represent, we usually use the Maasai people. So that becomes our national representation. But not everybody in Kenya is Maasai.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point. So you have to choose. If you had to have one, you have to choose, and you try to average it out, or what have you, and that's that.
That's
I
the
was
lake.
recently in Senegal for real, and you know, it hit me how much you know, we have a stereotypical view of what your average African is supposed to look like. You know, you had Africans of all shades in Senegal, and Africans from everywhere in West Africa, damn near. You know, in Senegal.
Hmm.
One thing that was interesting that might be, you know, relative or not, but was, and I have a few pictures here. I wish I could share my screen. I'd have to find the pictures though anyway. But it's like the barbershop pictures, you know, the profiles.
Oh yeah.
It's so interesting because, you know, when they do those profile pictures, they're never as dark as like people actually are. You know what I'm saying? They're always like this reddish kind of color, you know. And it's I don't know. I don't think you could really explain it through colonial influence alone, you know what I mean? But I think that's something to look at for real.
It's the Nile River, the riparian zone. I'm not gonna start that argument today. But this is in Aswan. This is the place that we stayed at, the hotel. And I'm just, just trying to get some Nile River video. I didn't know what was on that video. I'm sorry. Sheffrin, you got anything to say?
Oh yeah. Well, I was gonna piggyback off of a couple of things that y'all was saying. Far as wise the Egyptians and the different phenotypes. Um, it seems like, well, I can go straight to West Africa, because we know that people in that occupied North Africa, had a different phenotype, and they had different admixtures to them. That's separate. And then you had people always to the south of those people who were darker, who we would consider, with our modern construct, as being considered black, right? But the juxtapose them between, the people in the north, right? The Berber types, is scholars who, always stated that the blacks to the south, or the Sudanese people, represent the more sophisticated society and the earliest stable societies that existed within those regions. When you think about ancient Ghana, right? The scholars have noted that the Berbers were vassals, right? Before Islam, the Berbers was vassals to the Ghanaian kings, right, of the Sahel. And they noted that basically, like, that the Berbers had pushed the Sudanic people, right, and the Sahel further south by constantly raiding them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they say that the sophistication that any sophistication that you've seen in the Berber societies right, before Islam, came from the Sudanic people, meaning the Sudanic people had a more sedentary society. They were farming and grazing animals, right? The water holes and stuff that they created for the grazing of their animals um allowed them to build more sedentary societies, where the Berbers to the north, they were more of a uh people that moved around a lot, right? And they had raiding parties, so they had camels and horses, so they would do fast raiding parties, right? They would raid the Sudanic settlements. So the Sudanic people, which we're called the black people, they moved more into the interior to stop from being raided by the Berbers, right? Because they would do fast raids on these people. But it was saying that the Sudanic people they had better military or more people because they was able to raise bigger populations. So the sophistication of the society, right, far as governmental structure, that's what I'm getting to. That the Berbers had, it came from the Sudanic people, right? Their structure. And when the Sudanic people was able to build bigger complex societies, the Berbers actually was vassals to them. And two Islam came on the scene that gave the Berbers more structure, right? And they was able to do things, but they inherited that from the Arabs in Islam, right? So you can see the same thing when you look at the Sudanic people versus the more northern people in Egypt. The Sudanese societies, right, when you look at it, had the oldest monarchs and kingship, right? And they bequeathed that to the northern people or the lighter people, the more Berber types. So the older sophistication always seems to come from the south more. So that's my take on it.
I'm pausing the video here because I want, and if one of y'all can kind of pull up some images from the so-called 25th Kushite dynasty or Nubian dynasty.
Yeah.
And we can do a comparison and show that, again, like when you talk about Nubian, you have to respect the different groups that they're trying to lump into Nubians. And because, again, we are in the Nubian village, so-called Nubian village. And this is in Egypt. And this is what a lot of them, most of them look like. And, I wish I could zoom in, on this young brother who was on the horse. But, he looks like the what I say to Harko, if I could find an image of him or whatnot, you can kind of see in his face, and because they don't look that different. Like people think that when the Nubians came and took over into the 25th dynasty, that the images that you see of them are of them just stylizing it in a quote unquote Egyptian way, not understanding that that's just how they look, because they're trying to make it seem as all the black people in the Sudan look just like the Dinka people. And that's only one type of people that existed and that exists in modern Sudan. Not knowing that these folks here are part of that Nubian group, and people who look like Emi Ket are part of that group, who don't look like Dinka. And we can see even darker brother and he just rides this. Is it a donkey or is it He it's funny how he just rides this donkey. You can just see him. But he looked kind of like Smash.
He does. Magi Archers in the
Magi
building.
Archers was in ancient Egypt. That's his cousin right there. Somebody tag him.
Yeah, you should take a still shot of that.
Yep.
Jonathan Owens Jr.
Jonathan Owens Jr.
Yeah,
but you see the hair texture, the type, and this is when you look at the word for hair, it is in this curly pattern in the Egyptian language. And so there's a reason why, like, I think it's the Shabaka stone, where at the beginning of the Shabaka stone, he states that, you know, he's retelling the story of our ancestors. And Egyptologists think that they're just trying to, how should I say, that they're just trying to associate themselves with the Egyptians, not knowing that the quote unquote Egyptians, the Remech, and these people were historically part of the same group, in the same way that the Yoruba and the Igbo are a splinter group. And so this is why you sometimes you just got to have boots on the ground to be able to see some things. And where's this other? Because we had I had an interview that I did with a brother. Let me see. I'm sorry. See if I can find it. Here we go. This elder here. Let's see if you notice something, Brother Wujau. And I ain't gonna say nothing. But this is the elder here. And this is his nephew. So, you know, look, see how he looks. Like these are the people that you see on the walls.
Man, my man look like John Henry Clark.
Exactly. And
Professor Walter Williams sitting right there.
Now looking at you ain't going to see, but he has Marotic writing on his hat. And so he's interpreting, so he doesn't speak a lick of English. And he's breaking down some of the wisdom of his native tradition, which has kind of been mixed with Islam now.
I've seen him on Georgia Ave before.
Like these are the people who live in Egypt and whose ancestors been in Egypt since time immemorial. But they don't want to show them. They want to show like who the president is now and make that seem like that's the representatives of the Egyptians. And so like this brother, his tone, his skin tone, the reddish brownish of his skin tone is the average depiction of the Egyptians, just looking just like this. But, you know, they want to make it seem like it's stylized. It's like, no, it's an accurate depiction of the people.
You know, I think it's a two-way street, because if you go into pretty much any major U.S. city, Black people tend to occupy the southern part of any given city. On the south side of the railroad tracks. Like that's a known historical fact that we always congregate on the south side of railroad tracks and things. And it could go all the way back to slavery days and whatnot. But we are on the south side of pretty much every major city. And then we would broaden it out into a country. We usually occupy the south of any given country. Even if the whole country is located in the northern hemisphere, you know, whatever, we still occupy the south part of it. And then over here, what you're looking at here in the Arab Republic of Egypt, the Nubians occupy the southern part of Egypt. And they're going through, some people over there are going through very big hardships there. I saw a recent documentary where these Nubians that they refer to, they're going through, they get catching it over there to the point where they even have some new customs where they're intermixing with themselves so as not to erase themselves out of history and things.
Like that's exactly what I didn't have the audio up, but that's exactly what the elder was talking about. It's part of what he was talking to us about in lecturing, and I got it on tape.
Yeah, so you know, I don't know, this is not the same conversation to have now, but this kind of leads into my discussion about this social class system where black has become synonymous with this lower status, you know, social status and everything. And we don't seem to understand that, you know, and I think we need to get a grip on it if we ever expect ourselves to prosper and get out of it and gain agency again. We need to understand how this is operating and functioning around us. What is Unc Benu kind of shoes he got on?
It's one of those grip running shoes.
Oh, okay.
That look like feet. That's
Okay.
what those are. And I want to get some like them. Them joints are nice in terms of function.
Man, he look like he's got vertigo on the feet. That's like
It looks like he stole somebody's legs, you know.
I was like, what?
This is his wife here, or at least one of them.
All right, okay, so that's cool.
So he is sharing some of his wisdom diagrams. I have to do a lecture on this or just a show on this.
Don't show that too much. The Hebrew Israelites gonna grab that. Star David.
You know. But yeah, man, you gotta talk with the people. You just can't go and just take pyramid pictures. You know, this is where you get the heart of, you know, the unexpected stuff, little nuances, you know. And it's interesting because I remember like I saw him greeting somebody, and you know, I don't know if he like if I have it somewhere, but you'll see on the walls some of the depictions of the Egyptians doing this in terms of greeting and one of the deities. And this is a symbol that they use to greet and say what's up to one another. And I'm like, I just happened to catch it. And I was like, So I immediately start thinking about the wall. It's like you got to look at the little nuances. Certain things could be answered, you know, in that manner.
So you're just gonna leave us hanging and not tell us that you asked him and he told you of what it means exactly?
No, it's just a greeting. Well, in terms of what it, like, if there was a deep meaning behind it, no. 42 tribes. I'm trying to send you the link to join the panel. I forgot what your Facebook handle is.
Rico Suave.
Put it in the chat so I can send you the link on Facebook. Once you hear this, 42 tribes.
42 tribes is about to bombard with images. He got some really good images of diversity in Egypt. Definitely.
Let me see if I can find him on Facebook. I forgot his name on Facebook. Rico the 42 tribes. Let me search messages.
Rico Suave.
Suave aria. Yeah. Rico. We lost Sheffrin?
Chevron probably cutting somebody's hair for $7.
I believe. He was cutting hair during the show this morning. Is he? I'll wait for one. I don't know if he can hear. But anyway,
I'm gonna see if I can find 42 Tribes. He posted in the group a few times. Let's see. No, that's not him. Because he had an argument about the DNA study of DNA tribes.
mm-hmm.
And I'm looking.
See somebody from the Levant Arabs. I don't know if they're having a separate conversation there. That's right. Rory. I put the link in your inbox, Brother 42. So I meant to send you an invitation earlier. So if you want to join the panel.
Roy Friesen, yeah.
Yeah. Let me see. I haven't been paying attention to the chat, so I'm trying to go up and see what they've been saying. But anybody else have something to say? Brother Aziz?
No, I'm just listening, Brother Shepard, he sound like one of them types that'll never be convinced, even though ain't nobody really trying to convince nobody anything.
I think based on what Sheffrin was saying today, I think that he is much more in agreement than in disagreement.
That's what's up.
Based on my past conversations and others, I think Sheffrin is because he said earlier that he's convinced of the evidence, and he agreed pretty much with what we were saying tonight and everything. And even on when he was on Chief X's panel, I think Sheffrin was the most neutral person in terms of what his positions were. And I didn't hear the whole thing, but from what I heard, what I did pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. But I think the issue is the same issue with him and everybody. I think that it's just difficult for people to kind of disconnect from the normal way the normal errors that we make when we address these kind of topics, and not take time out to really learn how to address it. And that's what we were talking about. It has to be through the lens of cultural anthropology. It can't be through any other way. These social constructs of today and stuff like that, because it's not going to get us the answers we need. And that's just the bottom line. So I think 42 is in now. Yeah.
Well, before I bring the 42 in, I want to address this comment here for I don't know how you pronounce that first name, Uriah bin Yarub. He says, of the other Afro-Asiatic branches, linguists have variously suggested that the Egyptian language shares its greatest affinities with Berber and Semitic. And as I mentioned in the earlier conversation, you're going to be surprised that all of this is switched. And there's a body of quote unquote Black African linguists who have come to the conclusion that is false. They cannot sustain the argument that Egyptian is closely related to Berber or Semitic languages based on sound meaning correspondences, which is part of the very process in which you determine, the relationship between languages. And they've had a whole conference on this recently, and a book is coming out making this particular argument. So I can't wait for that to be released, but they're just coming to the conclusion that the Africans already understood because the Africans did the work. And that is like, no, Semitic languages, and this has a very deep implication for the so-called Hamitic hypothesis that these groups came from this Semitic area. So if how could these Semites come and create Egyptian civilization and then totally change their language in the process. And so, but 42, peace and blessings to you. Welcome to the program. And
Thanks
what are
for
your
the invite.
thoughts so far?
I'll probably have more to say in a second.
All right.
Because I'm still recovering from last night. But I will say in response to that, like we got to remember Berbers are mostly, like, I would say Algeria is where like the heartland of Berbers are. And I'm thinking because like to travel around the desert, you're probably going to go around the Mediterranean. So you do have Berbers, like at least in the western desert of Egypt with the Siwa Berbers. And the thing that kind of stands out for me, and I got a lot of pictures of Siwa Berbers, is they, in fact, I want to show one thing because I've gotten so used to seeing them to where I can recognize when they're fake. And I could tell, let's see, hopefully this is, all right, this looks like I'm sharing it. I could tell like this one image was a TV show. Let me see if I can find this TV show. Actually,
that famous background.
I think I might have two images of it, but I'm like, I could tell them like this. For some reason, they just don't look right. But I'll give the TV show credit because it was capturing the diversity. It just wasn't capturing the look right. Let me see if I can find that. Let's see it. While I look for that, I'll find one image of actual Siwa Berber women. I'm going to see if I can find another one. The one that's fake. Because this one, I think I even did a post on this.
Can you expand that one?
Yeah, let me zoom in a little bit. Let me see. I know I got this here somewhere, but there are others too. Like and I'm not sure, but I've heard like this right here might be like that. I lost that. But I think that might be he might be a Siwa boy. But here's this I think is one from the TV show. Yeah, this is from the TV show. Let me see if I can find that other one because one of them just like really stood out as being. Oh, here it is. I found it. I'm like, and this is kind of. I'm like, this seemed kind of off, and I actually found out this woman in the middle is Jordanian, and I think I found her as an actress because I was looking at it's a TV show that's in Egypt, but they had a Levant woman. I think they might have actually Egyptians in it, but a lot of them were like East African. I think one of them might have been Central African, West African, the others from Asia or whatever. But that stood out. Let me see. These are also like some of the men. And one of the reasons I was looking at them is because I wanted to see, is there any population in the northern part of Egypt that's somewhat isolated that might give you a better example of Lower Egyptian diversity? Because the reason why I was like into the phenotype of Egyptians is I wanted to see how you could best portray them in a movie because I was writing a movie script. So I was just like, well, Google is live like it's never been, and I'm probably not going to leave the country to actually go there for a little while. So that was what I was into. But as far as like the language being closer, we got to remember, like, this is like, people think I'm in shrooms. This is sober September, no shrooms. So I just like that background. But it's like Niger is closer to Egypt than Algeria, and not that proximity is everything. It's just that if you're gonna kind of just guess, because it seems like the dude in the chat with Semitic and Berber is kind of guessing. I'm like, you might as well just say like whatever there's different languages. You got Afro-Asiatic in Tanzania, but if you just go by proximity, you might as well go into Greece and start saying, hey, it's a Indo-European language. If you're just going by proximity and guessing, but I mean, when it comes to like people doing that work, you got books on that. Sorry, and you do too, Joe. So y'all could speak on that. It's funny. One last thing I wanted to say is how Chief X admitted that he wasn't smart enough to read as hard. like at least you admit it. I mean, I didn't think it was that highbrow. I've read Nesabiti and Where Is the Love. And I'm kind of backed up on my reading after that, and I thought like the first couple chapters you might have to read them over to gain an understanding to go forward, but you don't have to be brilliant of mind to understand what's going on after that.
Yeah, I try to avoid, like, if I'm just speaking strictly to the scholars, my books would be a lot thinner. Like Illusion Volume 2 would not be that thick. But it's thick for a reason, because I had to do a lot of explaining. I had to put extra resources in there so that the reader can understand, what the level is and what the expectation is in terms of method. And so when I'm making my arguments, they have a framework from which to judge. And if you just make just the quick statements, assuming that the reader will just know what you're talking about, they can miss a lot. But now that I have, for example, in Eluja Volume 2, like the next book that I'm coming out with is only going to be 100 pages. Because I don't have to go through all that stuff. I could just refer you to Eluja Volume 2, chapter 8 or 9. Read that if you are in, if there's any confusion and stuff like that. I can just get straight to the point in the upcoming text on, the Orisha and, and ancient Egypt. But getting back to the whole phenotype, like to kind of answer my own question from the beginning, like the thing that I would have to look for is, okay, what is the range of phenotypic expressions, natively found across Africa? Then kind of create a chart and a spectrum and put like a number on a range. So like, let's just imagine, this is one just rectangular bar that is divided into sections. You put 5, 4, kind of like how, anyone who has a woman, a Black woman, will have definitely come across this when they start looking for products for their hair. They're saying, well, I have 3, B or 4C hair, and I didn't know what the heck that stuff was, because men, we just got hair, but women got types of hair that they got, numbers for. But that's because of certain products that they have to get, and I get it. But something like that, for example, if we're talking about hair color, or if we're talking about, skin hair color, hair texture, and shape, and then, skin color, nose index or whatnot, so that you have a way to quantify these particular characteristics. And then that way you have a way to do a statistical analysis in terms of the ranges in which, these particular things fall into. And then, because the greater question is on the identity. So we were dealing primarily with the phenotypes and stuff like that. But when it comes to identity, we got to understand that, there's the way that the Egyptians self-identified, and then there's the ways that people outside of the Egyptians identified them. And I think that sometimes there's confusion because the way that we would judge the ancient Egyptians is some people are taking that as how the Egyptians judged themselves. And I think that's where a lot of the problematic comes from, which is why, for example, we have these debates on whether the Egyptians call themselves black and the whole Kemet thing, versus how we would describe them given our current cultural and political context. And even that is more so a result of us being over here in the United States versus living on the continent. Or, I would love to have some discussions with some like Eastern Asian folks just totally divorced of this whole conversation and linkage to ancient Egypt, but to have a discussion on how they would view, like how do they distinguish between each other in East and Southern Asia, and how would they look at the Egyptians themselves and their reasons why. I think that would be a good, if I can find, admittedly, I don't have too many East Asian friends, so I just have to scour the net and see if they'll be a part of a show and a program, and we'll do a live show. But what else would I do? I'll look at, and then we have to have a ranking system for, what issues or what characteristics are at the top of the list and what is at the bottom. Like I would put food at the bottom, like either at the bottom or towards the bottom, because food, unlike in modern times where we have ships now that can send food and even fruits and vegetables in a refrigerated system over long distances, pretty much you ate what was grown around you. So, outside of calling, certain foods of the same type, to me, that wouldn't rank as high as in terms of shared tradition as I would say funerary practices, and so, what are y'all takes?
I agree with that 100% because that's kind of line up with how I would approach it. And that ranking system I think is very important to how you said, and that system would change depending on the time period of the people you're examining, because like you said, food will be low now, but when you walk backwards in the timeline, it may have a higher position because travel is limited. Mm-hmm. And so a person's resource and food would kind of be high on the list of a distinction. But I just hope that people are like, this is what I see people are doing. It's like you're asking the question of how long is something. So if you have a how tall is something, if I ask you how tall are you, but in you answering that question, you go by a scale and then you weigh yourself and then give me that answer. But my question was, how tall are you? And I think the question of the Egyptians, that's what we're doing. That's what people are doing. They're asking one question, but then using tools and gathering things that's gonna answer something totally different. And I think that's the biggest problem. But yeah, what you said would correct it. We would have to do that.
Like I look across Africa. So like for instance, if we was to do a survey across Africa of burial practices that include mummification, like in when I'm talking about ranks, I'm talking about in terms of not necessarily identity in the sense that I mean, there's one for rank, I mean, for identity, but in terms of comparison, like I would, if I'm comparing cultures, in terms of looking for something that strongly links them together, I would put food at the bottom of the rank, because it's generally, in a traditional context, what is in a general area, of course, is shared. But you wouldn't expect, unless, for example, like bananas and chicken are not indigenous to Africa. They come from Asia, but they've been spreading across Africa, as early as 3000 BCE from East Africa. And so like this will tell you something, in terms of migrations and trade, in the early periods. But like, for example, I look at this, like how many in their indigenous artwork do they have these depictions of false beards, in this particular manner, like what you see in ancient Egypt. This is Congo that you see in this. And then shout out to brother Dejed, and Unc, who gifted me this book on Congo mask. And it's a very important text that I still have to go through, because right now I'm doing my communications work, so that has been the focus of my studies as of recent, and trying to get this other book done. But yeah, so brother Aziz.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of cataloging things, and it's appropriate, because while some people are debating whether the Egyptians were black or whatnot, I think what's more up to date is people are trying to establish what the genetic kinship of African people looks like in general to African people, in a global context. So I think that's on point. There's so many items. When I do work with Wolof, I encounter that all the time. You have to consider what things are from an older time, from an older parent civilization and inherited aspects, versus what things could have come from innovations that are exclusive to Egypt.
Hold on one second. I'm gonna I need everyone in the audience to make sure that you hit the like button, and that you share the video so that we can keep the conversation going, and make sure that you subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed to the channel, so that when we have conversations like this, or I upload a video, that you will be one of the first to know. But Sister Miket, you have anything to add? On mute right now.
Oh, sorry, I stepped away for a minute.
Okay.
Yes. What was the question?
Oh, I was just saying if you had anything else to add into what was said in terms of the way and manner of possibly ranking or like kind of having a ranking system and a division system so that we can do a serious future study in terms of characteristics. Because like what, I'm thinking more like a computer scientist in that, okay, we got to find a way to quantify these particular characteristics. Like we have to have a conversation of what constitutes an identity and what are those characteristics, and to take those characteristics and assign them a number value, so that if we were to look into a database and do a search, it would pull up, and create, like we would have to code and create something that produces a statistical value for the communities that we have in our database, what percentage shares this particular feature, and and given this criteria, how do for example, the ancient Egyptians cluster with West Africans in terms of shared beard motifs. I mean, shared having a false beard motif in their artwork.
Oh yeah, okay, that's very interesting. I know that Uja has been talking about this in our class a bit. Talking about the different ranking systems of different when it comes to identification of different cultures, what ranks high and what ranks low, and you notice that there's always a difference. So I think that's a great idea, so that people can have a better look at things and compared to different cultures and figure out where the similarities are. That's definitely a good idea.
Hold on one second. Ali Garrett says, asarimhotep, when you had Professor Rebecca Futo Kennedy as a guest, she seemed to make excuses when the ancient Greeks said ancient Egyptians had black skin and woolly hair. She said black skin was symbolic in Greek religion, so I guess woolly hair is symbolic also. That must mean that black people don't exist in reality. I think you may be mixing two concepts because, matter of fact, in my analysis on Kemet, I highlight this fact of what black means. Like black has a different meaning in Greek in terms of black earth more specifically, and black earth is synonymous with death in that culture, and but when you're reading the text, they're not the way that the text read. You cannot interpret the way that they're calling the ancient Egyptians black in a very symbolic way, because it wouldn't make any sense. For example, there's a text that I have where in the Greek period, using the Demotic script, they're describing a Nubian woman as black and then with a round face. So unless round faces are also symbolic, you couldn't interpret that along those lines. Like the way that they're using it, they're describing the physical characteristics of the people that they saw. But I'll have to go visit and revisit that interview. So for everybody who is interested, I highly recommend going on my channel and finding that that interview with Dr. Rebecca Futo Kennedy, and she is a classicist. And in our interview, she talks about how the Greeks describe the ancient Egyptians as black people. And so this is one of those things that it's just interesting that, again, like people like Chief X and others would try to come behind as if they know more than the classical writers who actually saw them and interacted with the ancient Egyptians.
Absolutely.
And so again, you notice that they never cite the ancient Egyptians. Excuse me, they never cite the Greeks when they're talking about the ancient Egyptians and how they describe and what they saw. But 42 tribes. think he's on mute. Brother Aziz, you have something?
Man, I think we didn't cover so much. I think one thing that comes to mind is just the fact that whenever any study of West Africa, of West Central Africa, of Africa, period, at some point is going to bring you to, you know, the Nile Valley. Is going to bring you to Pharaonic Egypt. So, you know, I don't think there's any getting around it, you know.
Yeah, it's unavoidable. Plus, we would think that, obviously, because it comes from the fact that, like it's been stated before, there's so much documentation coming from ancient Egypt. So it's almost a given that when you're studying any part of African history or culture, then you would want to supplement that with some kind of documentation. And then even when you're studying Egypt, you do need or ancient Egypt, you do need to study other African cultures. So this is like a marriage. There's no one without the other. You can't avoid. They're all in Africa, so you need to study all of them to be well-rounded and get the full information.
Indeed.
Well, I would just like to say that I think in about 20 years, we'll probably look back at this and see how ridiculous we've been in entertaining these things. But no, I just hope that we can get over this quickly as possible. When I say this, I mean the misuse of the right tools to answer these questions, and I keep driving that point home because that's exactly what's going on. And I just and I think Emika said this earlier, because as a consequence of it, people are being deterred away from actually studying the genius of the Egyptian culture. And I think that that's the purpose. Like anthropology, cultural anthropology, you're trying to analyze a human population through the lens of culture. And what's the reason for that? You're trying to learn about it and see what its contributions are, what its behaviors are, and things. And from today's perspective in modern times, that will allow you, even if you don't never do it, but it will at least give you access to actually utilize anything that's applicable. You can learn from the past so you don't make the same mistakes, or learn from things that were proven beneficial that we could probably use that is beneficial. And things. That's what history just in general is all about. You don't want to repeat history if it's negative things that you can improve upon. So I don't even think that we even scratched the surface because we're so caught up on this shallow stuff. And because I've done this many times. The people that argue over the blackness of Egypt, I ask them probing questions about Egyptian accomplishments, like Amenhotep III. I say, name 3 things that he's known for accomplishing. They can't say anything. Hatshepsut, name 3 things that she's accomplished and known for. Can't say anything. Right. And so we miss out on the genius. In the meantime, now, mind you, other cultures that are non-African, that are more distantly related to Africa on any layer, whether it's genetics or whatever, they're studying this stuff and taking it more serious and actually having utility out of it. The same way they do with Greek and Roman culture, they're looking at Egypt and gaining utilization out of certain elements, whether they tell us directly, overtly or not. So anyway, just take architecture for one, and things, medicine, science, and methods and stuff. It's right there in Egypt. They're utilizing it. We just the ones that don't know it.
Yeah, that's a whole different conversation.
Right. But yeah, so I think they over there still talking. I don't know if any of y'all going join that marathon. I think they're trying to go for 48 hours now.
See, this is
they might.
This is something that a lot of people, because people try to say the Afar weren't in ancient Egypt. I'm like, yes, they were. And this is in Brother 42 is showing this. It's they make their hair white with this kind of butter, and some use a type of fat, and you can see that in the screen. I mean, excuse me, the depiction right here. So it's telling you there's different groups. So you can't say that this skin color here is symbolic, because it matches the skin color of the people who still to this day utilize this and put this in their hair. As a matter of fact, this that you see here with the type of butter, the collagen still use that in ritual and put it over their heads. As a matter of fact, Dr. Kipkowicz Sambhu talks about this in his text.
Can you talk about this one? Sorry, because this is the one that jumped out when we were saying, what does West Africa have in common? Is I was
We'll
thinking
have to
about
kind of
Benin.
blow it up a bit. I can't really see it. If I don't know, is there a way that are you on a Mac or are you on a PC?
I just got 3 monitors, so it might be kind of strange when I'm on a PC. But you see what I mean? Like,
yeah,
people just don't randomly make animal fetishes and use them in rituals. You know, this is shared culture.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Especially when it comes to the Assyrian, I don't know how to even say it, culture, mythology, whatever. It seems as though like that's very well spread throughout Africa. Period.
Yeah.
So
can you put that that photo, the one you just put back?
Oh, with the cones?
Yeah,
I got that.
See, people are saying that these cones, like, imagine, because again, these are cones of butter, or fats, right? So imagine putting this on with white people hair.
It'd be too
heavy. That'd be a mess.
Like this you don't find this like common in Europe or in the Middle East. These are things that you only find in Africa.
And think about how you got to stretch logic to say, well, they were wearing Nubian wigs, so they had to put grease on their head. So the wig would stay moisturized.
Exactly.
But that's Aku logic.
Yep.
And then all these other cultures that are just doing it are imitating those other white people that were imitating black people.
Yeah, exactly. It's then you have to question, like, okay, since they putting in the hairstyle of Nubians or whatnot, like why would the whites come and try to imitate the Nubians all the time? Like what do they gain from that?
It's crazy.
Like, it just don't make sense when you start asking more specific and critical questions. What is this? Primitive hockey.
They still playing that. Sudan, Egypt, Uganda, all up and down the Nile Valley. And it's spread beyond that. It's big in Britain now.
Yeah, even the
and then you got ice hockey. They don't play that in Britain, but everywhere else in Europe practically.
I'm thinking of damn it, I lost it. The chess. I want to do some more investigation on the what do you call it? Senet, yeah, game.
Mm-hmm.
And its possible relation to chess. And and I don't think they really kind of deciphered how the game is played, at least from my last perusal on the subject. But that's something that
has a social aspect.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It has a social aspect for sure. They know it has a social aspect.
Indeed.
I think everybody. I think chess should be a very fundamental default setting in the upbringing of our people.
Black people. Yeah.
Yep, chess. I mean, it's beautiful.
I wonder if
Yeah,
Senate is related to backgammon too, because that's similar games.
Or you send us a game. I don't think backgammon. Let me see.
Yeah, it's somewhat similar.
Like it's been so long since I played board games, even spades.
But I played the heck out of backgammon and chess. I used to play chess like it was no tomorrow.
Man.
Speed chess, backgammon. I would get slaughtered now, but I was heavily into that. But culture, yeah, like I said, I just hope that we straighten this out as quickly as possible because we're behind. Like in on the world stage when it comes to the study of Egypt, we are the furthest behind, but we have access to the best tools. Because what better people to examine Egypt than African people?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the Germans. You got to tip your hat to German Egyptology, whether you like their conclusions and whatever. But the rigor of the work and the discipline they have to do the work is like excellent because they hand wrote every single thing.
Yeah.
And have a lot of literature. They could be wrong as two left feet, but they put in that work. And here we are arguing over whether Kemet is gay. Or if the 42 gnomes and 42 laws of Ma'at came from the 42 laws of Moses.
What 42 laws of Moses?
Exactly.
What you see in here is an Egyptian man making the papyrus paper, the beginning process, because there's a drying process of making papyrus in the same tradition that they did, thousands of years ago. Thus, you see the kind of fake motifs in the background, but on real papyrus paper, or I should just say real papyrus instead of paper. So this is how you get you. So what I always encourage. So like this is the first day. This is in Cairo. So you'll be tempted to spend all your money and get some souvenirs and stuff from here. But I say, and I wish that we would. Well, I know they want to kind of end it on that note, but I wish most of the tours, like if I did my own tour, I would start in the Nubian village, and then go up and go down the Nile all the way to Cairo, and then we leave from there.
Mm-hmm.
That way, when you want to spend your money, you spend the bulk of it with the Black communities, and not the other communities who's going to be selling you these knockoffs. Man, I wish I had. I brought one of the souvenirs of the. They give you this little card of the hieroglyphs. It is the most pseudo representation of the hieroglyphs. I'm like, if you were just a regular tourist, you wouldn't know. Like, but someone like us would look at that and be like, "What is this BS that you try to feed me?"
Like the guy that looked at the word for D to give and said that's Allah.
Oh yeah.
Man. He's from Senegal, but he was in Philly for a while. I think he's back in Senegal.
I want to do a video on that one day, man.
Allah. Lam. What did he say? Lam lam.
Aleph lam lam ha. Aleph lam lam ha.
Aleph lam lam ha.
Allahu.
Yo, he had the people on the tour, man. On that tour, believing that.
Like,
stuff.
no, don't fall for it, Brother Rashidi.
Allah. Y'all going to the Step Pyramid, Zoza?
Yep. And you see they're trying to. I don't know what they're trying to do.
Man, that's been there for a long time. It's been there for a long time now.
Yeah.
And you would think, the preservation process, you know, like we talk about things in passing, but we got to slow it down and kind of be a little empathetic with all of this stuff. The Egyptian government today, they're responsible for this stuff, you know, whether we like it or not, and they have to preserve it whether we like it or not, and they have to invest whether we like it or not, and things, and they have a choice, right? How do you expand in your modern aspect of your country, but yet maintain ancient landmarks that are not just small little towns and stuff. These are huge areas of landmarks and things in the part of your country that where people should live. Like you're not trying to preserve a way out there in the desert that nobody's gonna live there anyway. So that it's tough because I'm seeing, you see the urbanness of Cairo and the neighboring, you know, spots, and then just an abrupt boom. Here's the ancient preserved parts. And
It's real funny that because like when you go there, is this the first? I don't know if I took a video of it, but like when you see the pyramids, right? And dang, I don't know if you can. Do I have some video? I don't think I show it in this video though. But like it's so like we're on the side with the pyramids of Giza or whatnot, and so you see the pyramids in the background. But if I was to turn this camera in the opposite direction, it's basically the Egyptian hood. So it's almost like, you know how most universities is like surrounded by the hood in many ways because the lands was cheaper. You know, that's exactly so. Like you'll see basically the projects on the other side, you know, of the pyramids. You know, in the opposite direction. I don't think I got video. I think I do, but not on this in this folder. But let me see. I think it's in my. Is it my last day?
Like it.
Let me see something here. So like, yeah, so this is what you would see on the other side of the pyramids. So it just looked like, you know, the Egyptian equivalent of the hood.
And that's what I mean. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
And
so that's rough.
And it's dirty. Like I don't know how to explain it because if I remember correctly, at least at the time, it's 10 million people who currently live in Cairo.
Yeah, that's one of the most the top populated cities.
Yeah, and because you know everybody, regardless, you have to land in Cairo. So that's, you know, if you try to make money, that's of course one of, you know, centered around, and everything's centered around tourism. So if you want to get money, you try to get them as soon as they get off the plane. And just the way that they do stuff, like you can tell that regardless of the biogenetic argument, culturally they are not the same people because they do not have the same reverence for the environment there. Like the streets will have all kinds of trash. It'll be like on the highway. I don't even know how to explain it. Like the highways, you know, one ain't got nobody's line, so people just drive all kind of crazy on the highway. It was a guy on a busy highway selling tires in the middle of the damn highway. You know, it's just crazy. I mean,
5G, 5G towers.
Yep, and so they all had coronavirus as a result of these 5G towers. But yeah, but so this is the same area. So you know, you see, of course, but at the same time, imagine you just chilling, like this is where you live, and just behind you is the pyramids.
Yeah,
Like that's just a dope.
that's flies. I don't know what right there. You go outside and just chill. Like I would go live and just have my webcam. That'd be my the
Man,
backdrop.
if I had a good, I got to figure out a way when I go back to get a good, because that's another thing that was problematic, is good Wi-Fi. And everything you like, they charge you for everything, and it's an arm and a leg. So to get online to do something, you know, it was going to cost you. So this is why I'm saying, like, when I'm asking for donations, going there for, you know, to do the film is because of all these hidden costs, because you got to pay people, you know, to let you film in certain places, you know, to get quality, like, because you're going to have to do backups. And so if I want to, you know, back up my stuff on a cloud somewhere, I'm going to have to pay for, you know, this kind of premium service. So you want to make sure that when you're shooting, that you take your footage, you make a copy on some other medium that is there, but you also want to make a copy and send it to the cloud. And so all of that, you know, it costs. And but it's but yeah, but at the, you know, at on one end it's like, man, but on the other end it's like, you know, you got pyramids in your backyard. Like, and of course, you know, you get used to it and you just, you know, but to be able to take that for granted. This is in a Nubian village. It's a Nubian dream. And it was actually cool. It's like when you go there, you just feel like you're in Africa.
Mhm.
You know, it's just a different feeling than when you're in Cairo. With the way that it is set up now, you feel like you're in the Middle East. And so for anyone who has been to, like, you know, Israel, Palestine, or something like that, it's kind of set up in the same way. And so you see wherever they go, they bring the spirit of, you know, where they're from there, and it changes the landscape. But when you go into the Nubian village, you feel the spirit of, you know, like they're living based off a tradition that goes back and reminds you of what ancient Kemet was, to the extent that, you know, there's certain survival. So you got to understand that most of them are now Muslims, and this is part of the Maradic script.
That's satanic worship. Got
Basically, according to them.
Rubik's Cube and the Jewish star. There you go.
Honestly, that's where I think a lot of continuances are going to be found when it comes to other African cultures, unfortunately.
Brother Benny playing the drums. This is it pissed me off because I was sitting here recording this and I didn't realize that the images on the brother's hat and what he was writing with was the Maradic script. And I was like, wait a minute, I know that damn script. And I pull out my laptop, which you see right here, and I'm going in to verify that that's Maradic script. And I'm like, if I would have recognized just off the back that was Maradic script, I would have had some questions for him live then. I had an opportunity to speak with him later in the United States. Matter of fact, while I was at a Sheikh Anta Diop conference. But and we was doing a live. Unfortunately, it wasn't like a recorded live like how we do now. But you know, we was on Facebook Live. And I had the opportunity to ask him questions and test him on the pronunciation of the Maradic script. And what's interesting is that according to him, he's the only one in his village that can read the script. That, you know, he has like a book and things, and his grandfather gave him the information and taught him. And so, I'm in the middle of some investigations to see in what ways that I could confirm that this is in fact the case. So he's already passed the phonetic test, but then again, he could always go into a book and study that now. And so I have to do some additional tests to make sure that, what he has is actually inherited. So I got to put some neurotic writing in front of him and to see if what he reads actually makes sense, and to see if he still speaks and can read the Maradic. And so it's significant because Maradic is allegedly has not been deciphered outside of the phonology and the in a few words that were able to be deciphered in some kind of loan words, and it's another Egyptian brother, and he's we're at Abu Sel, and I don't know if I showed the picture of that lake, because of the dam that they created and flooded all the Nubian artifacts and displaced the Nubians, and some of those are that are in the Nubian village. Like that's just one of the areas in which some were relocated. But they promised them electricity in certain places, like as Brother Wujah was saying, like they're going through it, and and so they treat them differently. The current ruling government and culture and things. And let me see. No, I don't got a picture of the lake here, but yeah, that let me see. Do I have, or is that in the other video? I don't know. This is just, I wonder if, because you always talk about like these black hills, like and this is like some of the black mountains. You can see them there. We're just driving. It's a long way. It's a long drive to Aswan. And so I was just capturing some video there. Where is, I'm sorry, you're saying something? Or someone's about to say something? Oh, I thought I heard someone. And a lot of this footage I can't use, not for a documentary film. Of course, you see the shaky cam, and so I'm going to have to get buy a stabilizer, because it's interesting because again, my camera is high definition camera, and you can hook up mics to it. But as soon as I hook up my mic to the camera or any other kind of lights and stuff, they now dub my camera a camera that is used for commercial use, and I would have to pay a commercial license fee everywhere I went to shoot, just by adding the microphone to my camera or any kind of lights to it. And depending on what kind of tripod I use, like if I bring like a cheap Walmart tripod, I don't think they'll say something. But if I bring in a good one, that costs $700, then I become a commercial entity, and I would have to pay extra. But I guess I can end it there. So we've been going strong. Any last words from the panel? I'll go with number 42, and then Brother Wujawu, then Sister Emmy Ket, and then Brother Aziz.
Well, just thanks for having me, and I'd like to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to pronounce. Is it Zu Keto?
Zuchetto.
Zuchetto. Nice meeting you. I think I've met everyone else.
Likewise.
And have a good night.
Indeed.
I would just say, yeah, I appreciate the invite and to really have a sobering discussion about it in the midst of the chaos. And I think that is still going on. I'll probably dip into the chaos for a little bit. But yeah, again, I just hope that we can get past this, because in just in my personal studies and my interactions with others, I get frustrated because I see a lot of energy and time wasted, because I realize how far behind we are, and I think it's wasteful energy to misfire on these opportunities to answer questions, and it adds to the frustration when once you realize it, you think you have the solution, but nobody else is listening because people are too busy digging deeper into the problem. And so I like conversations like this. It opens the way for progress, at least to put the ideas out there, and hopefully other people will join the bandwagon or whatever, and we can make this a study along with the other ones. Yep, but appreciate it.
No doubt. Sister Cat.
Yes, I would also just like to say thank you for welcoming me to your panel, and it was very calming, and these are the kind of conversations that I really like, and just for anybody watching and is interested in studying the ancient Egyptian culture and just any other African culture that might not be one that you have an affinity to, genetically or whatever it is, I would just like to encourage people to just have that interest, and regardless of what people say. Me personally, nobody's going to deter me from studying ancient Egyptian culture, regardless of all the noise that I hear, because my commitment to it is very different. There are a lot of things that I would like to put together and connect with my own culture, and just any other one that I might come across that might interest me. So I will not be deterred. And once I get to like Asar's level, I'll be more ruder than he is, because I do not have the patience I don't even appreciate the fact that people think that they can tell other people what interests they should have, with cultures, especially African culture, because it's really bad enough that we don't get to be the voice of our own history. And so any time that somebody, regardless of whether they are of that particular African culture or not, any Black person that decides to take that particular task of figuring out what the history of different cultures in Africa, and some people will tell them not to do it, that is not the way to go. And don't be deterred. Do it, and do it proudly.
Indeed. Zuchetto.
All right. Well, I mean, I love these kinds of discussions as well, and I just hope we have them more and more, and with time they start to drown out the other noise, And thanks for hosting the panel, hosting the discussion. Peace to everybody else on the panel in the chat, and hope we have it again soon.
Indeed. And I know, Wujaru, you have your YouTube channel. Can you shout out your YouTube channel?
Yep. Well, I have my personal one. I haven't been active on there. Wujaru, just look up my name. You just want to subscribe. I'm kind of fired back up. More, of my thoughts coming from me. I refer to it as the desk, Iman Wujaru, which is from the desk of Wujaru. But also one I'm more active on is Seshu Ma'ani Metal Nature, where we do all things Kemet language and culture and open discussions and freestyle Fridays on the language and translations, transliterations. Divine Words Wednesdays, we tend to try to be more focused and give presentations on things. May try to kick off a presentation on this topic just to kind of organize it a little bit. So anyway, that's it. Seshu Maani Metal Nature YouTube channel, and then my own Wujao YouTube.
All right. And I know 42, I don't know how active you are still on yours. But if you want to direct people to some of your conversations, your YouTube channel.
Yeah, I'm kind of active. I'm spaced out a little bit more, but a lot of times when I'm spaced out, I'm more content rich when I do come on. But it's just 42 tribes. Kind of easy to find, but I get buried a lot. They don't really like me, and because I used to piss people off and get a whole bunch of dislikes if you look at some of my old videos. But part of it is I just tell the truth, and I go after people, and I don't punch down. I punch up a lot of times, and that angers people. But my last video is it's only like 12 minutes where I'm just comparing, and it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, comparing 11 ancestry tests with myself and a couple friends, and one of them is like 98% Western European. He's like 2% African of different sorts, depending on the ancestry test. And the other one is like almost 80%. I'd say, well, really like 79, 78% greater African, like typical African American profile. And I am 2 for the most part, but maybe like a third European. And I'm just comparing them in different ancestry tests and comparing them to Egyptians, because I was really exploring the whole thing about, like Imiket was saying, people who tell us what we can't be interested in, who are making $100 million movies dressed up like ancient Egyptians, and they don't even bother to put on like some makeup to look darker a lot of times. And then I'm like, well, who's more related? Well, shoot, this might be the only way I can tell. And since ancestry tests are so chaotic, especially when you get to Egypt, because a lot of them don't have Sudanese samples to sort of bridge the gaps. I had to do, well, let me do a whole bunch of them and see what happens. So that's what I did. 11-minute comparison.
Appreciate it. And we're going to get Brother Aziz to start his own channel. And Sister MK, have you started a channel yet?
Oh, not yet.
We're going to get Sister Emmy Ket to start her own channel as well. So you can, here's a suggestion, any kind of commonalities and deep studies that you can do on Luo and related people, the differences and similarities with ancient Egypt, or just, or adding just knowledge of Luo to the pool of information would be good. And so just putting it out there. You don't have to, do it, of course, but the ancestors came to me in a dream and told me that you should start your own YouTube channel.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Definitely, I will. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'll just say I'm just a messenger. So
no, I that's really good. And even right now, while doing the grammar class, I've had a chance to kind of obviously when you're studying grammar, you go through you compare stuff with with the language that since we're doing session literature, Rani Kemet grammar. So I have been looking at whatever we learn, I do compare and look into Kiswahili, because I speak Kiswahili and Doluo. Kiswahili is a lot easier because there's a lot of documentation and all that stuff. But with the Doluo, I could definitely see that is a lot of work that would need to be done, and I would like to compile a few things as well while doing that. So that's definitely a good idea.
I definitely have some Doluo dictionaries, and I think I have one grammar that, if you need it, I can share them with you, so that you just have something to just sit. I know you speak the language, but just to sit with and to see some other terms and some hidden stuff that you may not think are closely related, but may be present if you see it. So just let me know. But with that said, I appreciate each and every one of you who are listening live to this program, and then of course those of you who are catching the archives. Thanks to each and every one of you who made yourselves known in the chat room and kept the conversation going and sharing your insights. And those of you who have donated to the channel, much love and appreciation to each and every one of you. And with that said, let me just send one reminder. Remember that on this coming Friday, we're going to have Dr. Chilemalema Mukinge on at 5 p.m. Eastern time to talk about his book. And then I think around 7 p.m. I think around 7 p.m. Eastern time, I'm going to be on Dr. Ma'at's channel. And I'm going to be presenting on why, quote unquote, white people are not human. And then right after that, I'm going to be on Brother Kofi Pasai's channel. So, he's releasing the 4th edition of his series. And I don't think I have any of them here, but y'all should be familiar at least with this text, The Beautiful Lessons About Kimoyo. And some of the other works that they've done. So again, I don't have my books here in Texas with me. I only have like a limited amount of books. So, but my other books, they're in Philly, of the whole Masi Warrior clan or whatnot. So I'll be speaking, give us some good words there. And you could just check the whole, it's a whole bunch of members in the community who will be speaking, and they'll give you some insight. So you just go to shout out to Kofi Pasai TV, check out his channel. So next Friday is going to be very busy. So I'll keep y'all updated. And with that said, thank you again to all my panel members and Brother Chevron, who had to dip out earlier for joining the panel and discussion. And with that said, I will see y'all next time. Peace.